All right, it is 5 o'clock. So welcome, everybody. I am going to call this City Council workshop to order for Tuesday, April 3rd, 2018. And let the record show that the entire council is present. First thing on our agenda is our DS items, DS 18-026. Discuss agenda items for regular City Council meeting of April 10, 2018, and the first thing on there is our minutes, which is MN 18-007. Consider minutes of regular City Council meeting of March 27, 2018. Council, has anybody got any questions? All right, seeing none, we're going to move on to our resolutions. RS 18-022. Consider memorandum resolution approving an interlocal agreement with Bell County for the project management of security surveillance system upgrades of Robert Gray Army Airfield in support of the 2018 Defense Economic Adjustment Assistance Grant. Mr. Van Valkenburg, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Council, City Manager, and City Attorney. As the Mayor stated, this is to provide an interlocal agreement between the City of Killeen and Bell County to support Bell County's award of a 2017-2018 DAG for the installation of security surveillance systems and upgrades to the Killeen-Fort Hood Regional Airport, which is going to include security, safety, and operational efficiency. This project is sponsored by Bell County, and Bell County presents themselves as wanting to be responsible for and manage all funds. As such, they're asking us to enter into an interlocal agreement by which we will manage and direct the project. And that means it will be done exactly like a city project would. As you know, we just completed a very successful project at the Army Radar Approach Control Facility, and if I can get a PSA for just a moment, we got a gold board medal for that from the Council of Construction Consultants, whatever that is, for Texas, and we got an honor mention for a national award on that project. We're going to be using, I mentioned that because we're going to be using the same project team to manage this next DAG. As you know, we brought it in on time and under budget. We think we're going to have the same success for this project. Our alternatives were not to enter into the local agreement with Bell County. In that case, the project would be delayed, or enter into the agreement, which is going to create another cooperative between Bell County and ourselves. It also provides the best team and the best team dynamic to complete the project. Therefore, we are asking for your approval to have to enter into this interlocal agreement with Bell County and authorize the city manager to execute the same. And I'd like to answer any questions you may have.
Questions? All right, seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Van Valkenburg. Next item is RS 18-023. Consider memorandum resolution to approve a contract with Civic Plus Inc. for the redevelopment of the city's primary website and development of a mobile application. Mrs. Shine, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. If you'll remember, in December, I came before you asking for you to make a determination that an RFP, request for proposal, would provide the best value in our website redesign project, which you approved with the budget. And so tonight we have negotiated a contract, and I'm bringing it before you for your approval. Just a bit of background, it's our city's primary website we're talking about, KilleenTexas.gov. It serves all departments and is the link to any external websites that the city manages. It was designed in-house in 2009, but it has reached its end of useful life. It's no longer being supported by its creator, and there is limited expansion capability at this point. So our current annual usage is 2.1 million page views, 900,000 sessions, 443,000 users a year. It's significant, and we're also seeing a trend towards mobile usership versus desktop. So now it's 60% mobile, and we expect that number to continue to grow. We need to make improvements. We need increased storage and traffic capacity. We need to improve our security and reliability. We need to integrate the new applications we've added since 2009 when it was developed, and we need to create a mobile app and create more mobile compatibility. That go, okay. So you approved funding for the website redevelopment in the FY 2018 budget to improve and expand the public's access to city information and services and to improve our user experience. City Council approved the request for proposal process for the selection of a vendor, and on February 2nd, we received 8 proposals for this project. A staff panel scored each proposal and selected Civic Plus Inc. as the vendor that oh, they've moved the monitor. I apologize. That gave us the best value and the best project solution. And so we've negotiated a contract with Civic Plus Inc. in the amount of $68,403, which is within the budget that you all allocated this year for the project. So we considered a few alternatives. The first one, obviously, is to award that contract to Civic Plus Inc. We could negotiate an agreement with an alternate vendor if we thought that they offered a better value to the city, or we could just abandon the redevelopment project. But staff is recommending alternative number one. We've determined that Civic Plus Inc. offers our best solution for our project and is the best qualified to complete it successfully. They have 20 years of experience, 2,500 local government clients. They offer us a redesign after 4 years, which is a really great benefit. And they currently are working with cities like McKinney, Plano, Flower Mound in the Metroplex area. So with that, our recommendation is that you approve a contract with Civic Plus Inc. and authorize the city manager to execute the contract and any amendments within the amounts allowed by state and local law. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Johnson.
I have a question. You said you use a staff panel.
Yes.
Did that staff panel include any non-employee citizens? And if not, what process did you use to engage citizens and taxpayers, which are will be the end user of this project?
They will be engaged in the design process. So there will be a public component both in the initial design and also in the deployment. We want to use them to test the website to make sure that we're offering them what they need in the way that they need it. Okay. So the internal panel, it was made up of IT staff, myself, and public works staff because they're a big user.
Thank you.
And that's good, that's smart, because the end user is the one that's ultimately going to be using it, so. Mr. Harris.
I was just going to ask, what is the contract term limit? Is it like a year, 2 years?
Okay, so they're going to redevelop the website, and with the redevelopment, you get your first year's service included. Moving forward for the next 3 years, it's $7,400 a year, and that includes full support from the company that will host and manage the website, meaning the security and backups and those types of things. So they're actually providing that service. And then after 4 years, we can decide to have them either redesign or continue on with them. But for the first 4 years, it's no cost for the service other than the development the first year, and then $7,400 moving forward.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Mr. Rera.
Is this going to be one of those software that you back up the information from the clients?
So those are external parties. The website itself doesn't really host any information from customers. Those are in the systems that provide our billing, typically is where you would have protected information. The only thing that we would have really stored in the website would be something like someone's email address.
I haven't said that. You said third-party clients. So the city is not going to withhold private information, but what about their company?
Right, and so this may be a Tom question, but they have their own securities in place. So for instance, if you sign up to pay your water bill online, they need certain information about you that shouldn't necessarily be public. And so they have their systems in place that are protected and backed up by them. The city's not involved in that.
Because that's one of the bigger issues today in the industry, is about withholding information clients unnecessary, where there could be that information could very easily be jeopardized.
Yes.
So that's what I'm concerned, if they're going to be doing this or not.
Well, and I will say that this company, with their track record in making websites for city government specifically, they're very familiar with the third-party vendors that we're using for those more protected types of services. And so they build their websites knowing what they need to do to protect getting from the website into those places, but those places are ultimately the stop.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right, anybody else? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Shine. Next item is RS 18-024, consider memorandum resolution, the resolution authorizing the execution of change order number 19 to McLean Construction, Inc. for the Tremere Road widening project. Mr. Olson, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you mentioned, this is a change order for the Tremere Road widening project. You recall recently we had change order number 18, which was the local portion of this project. And as I stated at that time, a federally funded cleanup change order would follow. The change order 19 deals with the administrative cleanup for overruns and underruns on the federally funded portions of this project, which is the widening of Tremere Road itself. This change order offers a net credit of $304,889.73 back to the project. And after this change order, the next step will be final payment and closeout of the project. There are two alternatives to consider here. The first is to reconcile these bid line items, make the final appropriate payment, and close this project out accordingly. The second option is not to reconcile the line items, pay the final payment, and close the project out with an open balance. This item would create issues for us from an auditing perspective, and we will have audits on federally funded projects. City staff is recommending that we move forward with the authorization of change order number 19, reconciling the line items and decreasing the contract by the amount of $304,889.73. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Okry.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Olson, with this change order, credited back with the one that was done, was it, that came before council, was it last week or week before?
Yes, sir.
What was the total amount?
So the total amount with the last change order was roughly $89,000. Here you have $304,000, so you can see we're just under $400,000 credit back to the project.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Did you have a question? Mr. Johnson?
Not really a question. I'm just, is this 304 budgeted for another use, or is it just going to go back into the account?
It's currently budgeted for the Tremere Road project. That dollar amount would be available inside of the bond, and the intent of the 347 bond was roadway improvements, and I believe there were some public safety improvements in there as well.
So is there any proposed uses for it, or are we just going to let it sit there?
Not at this time. No.
We are working on the capital projects plan. We have a capital projects policy the council will hopefully approve soon, and as soon as that's done, we'll bring forth a capital projects plan, and inside of that plan, we can have that discussion.
Okay. And if I can move on this motion next week, I don't think I approved a change order since I've been on council.
I think we got that policy, capital improvement policy coming up next.
This is
So.
the kind of change order you probably want to approve.
Oh, I will vote for this one.
All right, anybody else? Moving on to our next item, RS 18-025, consider a memorandum resolution to approve the City of Colleen's capital project policies. Mr. Olson.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. If you'll recall, a short time ago, you reviewed and commented on the capital projects policies. Just a reminder, capital projects policies are going to set forth the framework for planning, development, funding, and construction of capital projects in the City of Killeen. These policies are going to help us maintain a long-term commitment to capital projects, both on the city staff side and the city council side. These policies were previously reviewed by City Council this past February. We'll touch on the sections briefly, where we won't go through all of these. You can see the sections on your screen here, but particularly Section 2 highlights the capital improvements program. This is the aforementioned program that Mr. Olson was talking about just now. It lays out what is included in that plan, what should be included, and how funding should be applied to those plans. You look at Section 4 is general project requirements, specifically a project manager that's qualified for every project. It affirms commitments to following state, local, and federal laws. And the final section, Section 5, is our non-discrimination in capital projects. This covers Title VI of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, and it establishes that there will be no non-discrimination with any external contractors or vendors, particularly relating to federally funded projects. At this time, city staff is recommending that City Council adopt the capital projects policies, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Mr. Harris.
As far as the project managers, would those be employees of the city, or are those going to be outside people?
The policy allows for either a city employee that is a qualified project manager or a third-party consultant that is a qualified project manager.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir.
Anybody else? All right, thank you, Mr. Olson.
Thank you.
Moving on to ordinances, OR 18-005. Consider an ordinance amending Chapter 28 Traffic, Article Number 5, Stopping, Standing, and Parking, Section 28-132, Parking in Residential Areas. I know you've been working hard on this, Chief, so I think we're ready.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. Before you today, I think we've had discussion on this item. Today is the ordinance for large truck parking in residential areas. Again, as a review, Section 28-132, parking in residential areas, addresses truck and trailer parking in areas including the areas adjacent to zoned residential areas. City staff reviewed options defining the restrictions of parking of trucks over 1 ton to 200, 300, 500, and 1,000 feet within a zone residential area. You can see here in this photo that truck parking adjacent to residential area does have some concerns as drivers or motorists try to go around the trucks. Those trucks, if they have refrigeration units, the drivers will let them run, having noise abatement issues for the residents that live nearby. The area in red illustrates a 500-foot buffer around all residential zonings. After due consideration of traffic safety, noise abatement, and reasonableness, the distance of 500 feet is recommended. Staff recommends council approve the ordinance, Chapter 128, Article 5, Section 128-132, parking in residential areas as revised. That would be the 500-foot buffer. Stand for any questions.
Mrs. Nash King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Chief Kimball, we had spoke last week or the week before last in reference to the grace period. Is that still in place?
Yes, operationally, if the ordinance is approved, what we would do operationally, I think we've done it before. I think I got some police officers here. When we changed the ordinance, I think it was a loud music ordinance some years ago, that we will give out warnings for a particular time, say 30 days. We will contact the owners of the trucks. We will leave notes on their trucks and let them know that's an ordinance change effective today. Let them know that they can find elsewhere to park. So there will be, operationally from the police department, there will be a grace period.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Anybody else? Mr. Johnson.
So, yesterday I put a post out on my councilman, I put a post out on my councilman Facebook page yesterday just to get some input from citizens. And I had a few truck drivers post on there, and on one end, there were probably about 15, 16 comments. Most of the citizens agreed that there was a issue with large trucks parking in the neighborhood, but they also had concerns on how we're going to enforce it, as well as properly notifying truck drivers. So, in addition to the information that you just stated earlier, is there funds available to put a notice in the newspaper? And maybe I know I don't want to stack anything on Hillary Shine, but just a quick clip, just if you can just raise more awareness about it beforehand.
Yes, sir. The police department has several social media outlets. We will use those. We routinely put out press releases. We have Facebook and Twitter and all that. Also, we can look at it wasn't budgeted to do that, but we can see if budget will allow for a newspaper print. I can't say that can happen for certain, but luckily, our police officers know the areas where people park at, and I think leaving a note, I know even where I live at, I've already talked to a driver, or two drivers actually, I let them know that there's going to be an ordinance change, so they're looking for alternate places to park already. So I think between our media outlets, and if the funds are available to do something in the local press, we will. So we will explore all options.
Okay, I appreciate it. I mean, I definitely appreciate it. That's the underlying concern I have with truck drivers being in and out.
And having that 30-day buffer time or grace period, I think, plays an effect also.
Mrs. Fleming.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Kimball, also, the truck drivers, when they are in the process of training new truck drivers that's coming on board, that might be good for them to put on their agenda to let them know that there's going to be an ordinance change. and what to look out for. So that might be kind of transparent to let them know.
Yes, ma'am. One of the first places we reached out to was the truck driver school at Central Texas. Then there's a truck drivers association. I believe their headquarters in Austin with a Central Texas chapter, so they know the change is coming.
Oh, great, okay. Okay, because these new truck drivers coming on, they'll have an excuse.
And they spread that word pretty quick, because you go to different areas and there's all these trucks parked there, and we didn't put in advertising or anything to tell them to park there, but they sure know that park there, because they all spread that word and they say, park there, you won't get in trouble. And you go to Clear Creek, and I drove by there yesterday, there's a lot of trucks over there. So I think that 30-day grace period is going to carry a long way, because they're going to tell each other not to park there.
Yes,
So.
sir.
All right, any other questions? All right, thank you, Chief, great job, yeah. All right, moving on, back to our DS items. Next item is DS 18-027, WCID number 1 briefing. And Mr. Garrett, is he here? Mr. Olson, you're going to introduce him.
Yes, Ricky Garrett is the general manager of Bell County WCID number 1, and he's here this afternoon to talk with you about the operations and projects going on within WCID number 1. And without further ado, Mr.
All right, welcome, Mr. Garrett.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I appreciate the opportunity to present to you this evening. I hope I can keep it within the time limit, but I'll try to be brief as I can here. If I can, so I wanted to talk about the district background. I'm not advancing the slides. Okay. A little bit about the district very quickly, and then about our wastewater treatment process, and some projections on flows and rates, and then on the water treatment process the same. And then at the very end, I'd like to kind of recap where we are with the major water plant project and the South wastewater plant project that's been completed. So on the background, in January 1942, the War Department announced the authorization of Camp Hood at that time. And that was just a month or so after Pearl Harbor, I guess, and situated where it is now as we know it is Fort Hood. The water supply for Camp Hood was from a 24-inch water line that extended from the current site of the Stillhouse Lake, but there was no lake at that time. It was just the Lampasas River. And so it was subject to the ups and downs of the river, and it was destined to be a temporary supply. And as Camp Hood became Fort Hood and the civilian community in Killeen and around it began to grow, the need for a permanent water supply grew with it. The Corps of Engineers began Lake Belton in 1949. And at the same time, they began a water plant construction for Fort Hood. And we still lease and operate that plant today. The Fort Hood petitioned the Department of Defense to be able to provide water to the citizens of Killeen. The Department of Defense declined that request and said that a local entity would have to be that vehicle. So Roy J. Smith and other Killeen leaders at that time got together and they formed Bell County WCID 1. Today, the district operates 90 million gallons a day water facilities. We'll talk about that a little more. We operate 2 wastewater treatment plants with a total of 25 million gallons per day capacity. And we operate a full-scale wood waste composting facility that was commissioned back in 2011. Do I need to point at a certain place? Because I'm not. There we go. So again, on the wastewater side, briefly on condition, then capacity, and then we'll talk about projections just briefly. Okay, so this is the plant 1. This Is the green the laser? Is there a laser? Anyway, plant 1 there, 38th Street is off on the right side of the picture. Veterans Memorial is down below the screen at the bottom. Clean High is just off the screen to the upper right. That's where our administrative offices are. And I think 1 or 2 of you have taken a tour at the plant, and we always welcome anyone who wants to come and take a tour. This is a South Plant, wastewater plant. This is a sequence batch reactor plant. It's a different kind of technology, but it's still wastewater treatment. Chaparral is just off the screen to the bottom, and Lake Stillhouse Road is off the screen to the right. This is a 6 million gallon per day facility. And then lastly, the compost operation is near the transfer lift station you operate there. When you come in, if you turn to the right before you go to the weigh scales, you'll enter the compost facility where in 2011 we entered into agreement with the city whereby we take the wood waste that would otherwise might have to be landfilled, and we combine it with the biosolids from our sewer process, and we make a Class A compost, and we're open to the public. So those of you who like to do yard work or gardening, you're welcome to come by anytime, and we always have material there. And lastly, this is the reuse line that was installed in 2015 and put in service early 2016. It extends from our plant on 38th Street that I just showed all the way to Roy Reynolds. And we tried several times to get the 24-inch line, the abandoned water line, to pass a leakage test, but we just couldn't get there. So some of you may recall we had to kind of change gears, and so we repurposed that abandoned line to be a conduit, where we installed about 11,000 feet of high-density polyethylene line. And to do that, we had to remove a couple of valves and to get the line in condition to do that. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble. There's guys removing the valve there at Water Street. Okay, so overall, the condition of the 38th Street plant is pretty good. It was upgraded in 2009, but we do have a couple of issues that are fairly significant. We maintain and operate 3 500 horsepower blowers for our treatment, and those blowers, they're big energy users. They by far. That's where the money is for that plant in terms of expenses. And those blowers are moving on 10 years old, so those are going to probably have to be replaced in the near future. And then the digester mixer assemblies, those are, picture an auger like you use for a post hole, except 8 foot in diameter and about 8 foot in length, and that's the major mixers that we use. And over time, we've had a lot of metal loss on those, and they just don't perform as effectively as they used to. And as you'll recall, the South Plant, or Chaparral Plant, was recently upgraded. We completed that project about a year ago. We had some issues, contractor issues, that we had to work through to kind of finish all the loose ends, but that plant is very good condition, except for occasional problems with the influent lift station pumps. And as a matter of fact, about a week ago, we had a pump that was damaged, and we pulled it. And this is I know it looks kind of ugly, but it looks like a big mop head. But in fact, what this is a clump of the flushable wipes that get in the sewer system, and I know they create havoc for your crews too, Ron, with lift stations and pumps. And all they need is something to wrap around, and then they cause a problem. So in the bottom part of the screen, there was a hard rubber object that got in the line somehow. And anyway, this was a $7,000 pump issue, And we plan and budget for some of these occurrences, but the bigger issue is the outage time that's involved and the potential for reliability issue when it's really needed. So that's something that we just work through all the time. In the South Plant improvements that were just concluded, we did improvements to the headworks. We have better screens. They actually remove any of those rags that you saw, any of those wipes that come through. Those screens are extremely effective at taking them out of the wastewater stream. They're also fairly effective at removing grease and other loadings. We upsized all of our blowers at that plant. The air capacity in a sequence batch reactor is critical, and so we upgraded our air for higher strength loadings should they appear. And then lastly, we added alum injection facilities that were needed to enable us to discharge to Tremere Creek. When the South Plant was built in 2009, the state only allowed us to discharge to Nolan Creek, so we have to pump over a ridge and into Nolan Creek. In our last permit renewal, we were able to receive an allowance from the state to discharge to Tremere, except that we have to reduce our phosphorus levels. Well, to do that, we have to have alum injection facilities. Here is a construction picture. These are a little older, but this is one of the digesters that was added, one of the big basins. You can see it's pretty serious construction. We have two twin basins that they're working on, and in the background where you see some gravel pile, that was the site of our alum injection facilities here. Of course, all of that is complete now. It's in service. And just as Plant 1, I would welcome anyone who might want to take a tour or visit or has any questions about these facilities. So moving on from condition assessment, I'll move on to capacity. Texas Administrative Code spells out a limit of when a wastewater facility has to be upgraded. And it's so we have a permitted amount of I'll take Plant 1, for example, of 19 million gallons a day. So when the flows reach or exceed 75% of that for 3 months in a row, then you have 1 year to get into design. If they reach or exceed 90% for 3 months in a row, you have 1 year to get under construction. And this is where inflow and infiltration, I know y'all have an aggressive program, David does, to try to reduce that, and this is one of the reasons it's so important. Is the inflow actually is the biggest influence on the flows. And these graphs, I hope kind of point that out. This is the monthly average flows for Plant 1 over the past 12 months. The bars in red exceeded the 75% number. So if March of 17, I don't know if you can make that out, but if March of 17 had exceeded, we would have had to contact the state and explain why that an upgrade was not necessary, if we could do so. In this case, we could do so because we were under construction at the Chaparral plant, so some flows were diverted to this plant that ordinarily would not have been. But another thing to point out on this graph is how the bars leading up to May of 17 are all higher. Well, that's because it was wet during that period. There was a lot of rain. As soon as we got into May and beyond, you can see the flows tailed off quite a bit. That wasn't due to us doing anything. That was just less rainwater and surface water getting into the system. The South Plant, of course, it was under construction. Less flows were headed that way, but you can see up through April the flows were a little higher as compared to post-April flows. But we're in good position overall capacity-wise. We're in good position condition-wise with just a little bit of exception. And the big thing for us on the wastewater side, and I'll have more detail later, is the is these flows. You can see, I should have went further back, but these more elevated flows predominated 16, the fall of 16 into 17. So that's what we were actually experiencing at the plant. Our fiscal year runs May 1st through April 30th. So everything we had to gauge by was higher flows. And so we developed our budget, put it together, and then flows dropped off. Well, a lot of our expense needs, not all of them, but most of our expense needs don't fall off with flow, because you have overhead, you have power, you have labor, you have the same things that you do with the city. And so I'll talk about that more here in just a minute. In fact, I may be to it here. So our current O&M rate is 85 cents per 1,000 gallons treated, and this is a very simple calculation. It's our estimated expenses divided by our estimated flows coming into the plants. And in this year that we're just completing, we will have experienced the lowest flow since 1999-2000. And it's not that dry of a year comparatively, so I'm not sure how to explain that. I know that there's been an inflow and infiltration program underway that will reduce those flow numbers. I suppose that's one explanation. But the reality is the flows are down. We would be irresponsible to project otherwise, but our expense need is still there. So I'm likely going to be recommending a 3 or 4 cent per thousand increase here in the next month or two. And the way we do that is, well, I'll get to that later. So is there any questions on the wastewater, what I just covered, before I move on to water?
Anybody got any, Mr. Rivera?
I don't know if this has to do with the lake water per se, but this has to do with Steelhouse. I know about 2 years ago, there was a plan for buying another plant to pump up the water supply for Bell County. It was a new one being built to pump that out. Have you heard anything about this?
I don't guess so. I'm not familiar
No,
with
that came from the Army Corps engineer. But either way, in 2014, we did an amendment to our budget, adding about $5 million, where we could get an additional 10 million more gallons of water, treated water.
Yes.
And I think we were getting about 30 or 32 million gallons of water during that time, and we had 10 million to it. With the growth that we have today, is that still suitable?
I think so. I'm going to have some slides. I
So
think
should
that'll
wait till
help
that
answer
time?
that.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
That's it, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Save mine to the end.
All right. Ms. Fleming, you had some?
Yeah, I don't know, I hope this is within your capabilities as, with your expert in water, 'cause I'm not an expert in water, where do you see Killeen stands in the next 25 to 30 years on water?
I think very, very good position, and I have some information that I hope will make you feel the same way.
I think the next step is the water.
And the
I
water,
think where
yes.
everybody has probably more of the questions.
Yeah.
All right, we'll
Okay.
continue on.
Okay. So similar to the wastewater, we're going to look a little bit about condition of our facilities, and then I'll look at capacity with some projections, and then talk about rate there, and then finish up with the capital project. This is a Lake Belton water plant. In actuality, it's 4 plants built on one compound. We still operate Plant 1, which was the plant built in the 1950s by the Corps of Engineers. And in fact, we lease that from the Corps of Engineers. The other plants on the site, we have 4 total. The Plant 1 was built in the 50s. Plant 2 was built in the early 60s. Plant 3 was built in around 69, 70, and then Plant 4 was built in the early 90s. And the 4 of those plants comprise the 90 million gallons per day treatment capacity. And the plants are in pretty good condition. This is the transmission pipelines that deliver water from the water plant on Lake Belton to the different locations. The plant at the top, or the pipeline at the top of the page, is by far our biggest pipeline. That's the 48-inch. There's portions of it that are 50 and 54. But in the summer of 2014, that's the pipe that got damaged right at the peak of flow, and it did create a lot of issues for us. The lines that run down to the south and then back to the west, those are older lines placed in the 60s and 70s. And then we do have a 36-inch line that is only a few years old that runs into Killeen. So transmission line-wise, we're pretty good. The 48-inch line was built in the 70s. So this is the 4 plants I was talking about that all comprise the water plant at Lake Belton. And you can see there's 2 things to look at. It's kind of a busy slide, but for each process there is a capacity entry, and then there's a condition entry. And this graphic was made in our last master plan, which was 2010, but most of this data is still relevant and still fair. But you can see within each plant, we have traditional treatment. Each process has a limiting factor. So plant 1, for example, CT stands for contact time, and that is the plant's capability to inactivate viruses and bacteria. And you have to have a certain amount of time in contact with the oxidant for the water to be proven safe. And in plant 1, that happens to be our limiting factor. So based on that, we can only flow 13.5 million gallons a day through plant 1. Others, you see, may have a different limiting factor. But of all the plants, we're in pretty good condition. You'll see a couple of poor conditions up there under plant 3, and we can't push that plant to its design limit based on several factors. And if we get in a position of having to spend some capital at Lake Belton, that's where we will make upgrades. But right now, we're in good shape. We've replaced several large diameter valves in the past few years. We've replaced a lot of filter media. But within the next 2 years, we need to update our master plan. We will be, by that time, we will have all the components bid and under construction with the Steelhouse and the transmission main. So we will know exactly where we are there, if our bond dollars are enough. We believe they are at this time, but there is zero cushion. We're right on the edge, which I guess is where you try to be. So with regard to capacity, there's various ways that's determined. It's by your water rights or your water supply. It's by raw water delivery, treatment delivery, transmission system delivery. This is a summary of the water rights that we have under contract with Brazos River Authority. And to the right column, that helps answer the question about is Killeen good for 25 years? According to this projection, that you would not need all of your supply until 2056. That projection, the last update I got, I think, was about 3 years ago, and that was still just about the number. And when you look at water rights, this is an important slide because there's different categories within Brazos River Authority. This first column here is called two-tier water. This is very old rights, and they're very inexpensive compared to current day rates, and I'll point that out more later. Those rights expire in 2042. In other words, that contract will be renegotiated at that time, and we can expect that those low acre-foot costs are not going to be available. The system water, the next column, that water is already priced according to today's standards, and it expires in 2031. That water doesn't go away, but the contracts have to be renegotiated. And just for observation purposes, Killeen has 10,000 acre-feet of system water, which will be used for the Lake Steelhouse diversion. and 10,000 acre feet represents 3.25 billion gallons, or 8.92 million gallons per day. Here's another way of looking at.
We got a question on that one. Mr. Okrie?
Mr. Garrett, real quickly, could you differentiate for the council with the
Yes.
difference between rights and ownership?
Yes. The rights that we have have contract with Brazos River Authority. We don't own any of the rights that we have. It's just contract. Fort Hood owns their rights. They have an adjudicated right unto themselves. Brazos River Authority is, we have a letter, a standing letter with them. I think we've issued 3 since I've been with the district in 5 years, requesting more water. And I'll talk more about that later, but that is a very good question. All the surface water is waters of the state. And you can purchase water rights like a property right if you can find a seller. But the Brazos River is fully allocated at this time. In other words, there's not a pot of water rights somewhere that BRA would sell for some price of money. There's just none available. They have some projects planned that I'll talk about in just a minute that may free up some water in Central Texas. This is another graphic that I think might be a good illustration of your capacity. So Killeen is on the far right, and this is contracted water versus usage, and this is annual contract right. So what I did is I went back in the records and looked at the maximum year of usage. In this case, it was 2011, and 20,000 acre feet was used. If you look at the bars to the left, that's all the water rights that you have available. So you had 40,000 acre feet available, and on your maximum usage year of record, you only used half. I have another graph that's not in my presentation, but since 2011, the combined usage of all the entities has actually decreased. And I think it has to do with education. I think people appreciate the value of water more, but we're seeing real conservation. It may have to do with rates, I don't know, but we're seeing it. This is another, we also in the contract, we have a maximum gallons a day allowable. And in this case, the Killeen's is 42, and the highest max day has been 22, so roughly half. If you take the Stillhouse water out, it was 32, so about 2/3 that have been used. Okay. So talking about those projects, the Brazos River Authority has 2 big ones that they think is going to make a big difference in their water rights availability. One is the big reservoir down in Houston. That's years away. The other is an augmentation project for Lake Granger in Williamson County. That project will take water from the lower Trinity aquifer to enhance the yield of Lake Granger, which would allow more Williamson County water demand to come from that source, which is closer to them. And in doing that, that could free up some demands on Lake Belton and Lake Stillhouse. So we're watching that very closely. Both of those projects are on their planning schedule, and I think that Lake Granger is within the 5-year window. So moving on, the rate is 65 cents per thousand, and this is calculated the same way as the wastewater rate. It's anticipated expenses divided by anticipated flow. It's very simple, and the flow for this past year was very close to projected, but we have had increases in chlorine, aluminum sulfate, and our electricity contract went to a penny higher. It will roll off in 2 years, be a penny lower again, but so we have those increases, and so we're expecting a 1 or 2 cent increase per 1,000 gallons on the water side for the coming year. And what we do is by contract, we send Mr. Olson's office a letter like this. This is a couple years old, but in there, it breaks down the amount of dollars that's for the annual debt requirement, the dollars for the water right pass-through. We just pass those costs through. There's no markup associated with them. And then our expected O&M. This is the total sent in June. It's not official from us even until our board passes the resolution adopting the recommended rates. And then after we have that from our board, then I will send another letter to each of the entities notifying them of our rate. And I haven't gone back terribly far in history, but in the past 10 years or so, the letter in June and the letter in August have been the same.
I have a question.
Okay, we got a couple of questions. Mrs.
Yes.
Fleming, go ahead.
I'm sort of like trying to wrap this around my head.
Yes.
The last that I knew that Colleen was paying WCID $30 million. So you're not saying that, but that increase is going to go up when you send Mr. Olson the letter. That's not what you're saying. I
No.
just wanted to get that straight in
Yes,
my mind.
good question. There is a debt schedule, it's fixed. It doesn't alter unless we bond something else.
Okay.
But each year, that debt changes a little bit based on other factors, like each entity has their own other debts that they try to tailor that schedule for their benefit, but the schedule doesn't change.
Okay, so we're good as far as not having to increase that 30 million.
That's right.
Mr. Johnson.
With the rate increases, is that, since the rate increase will be approved by the board of directors, which is elected by the people, is there normally a public hearing, or what's the process of engaging taxpayers? And
It's
getting input from
a
them?
resolution that they approve at a publicly held meeting, yes, sir. It's not a notified public hearing. It's a regular scheduled board meeting that's the main thing on the agenda. Yes.
I think that would be good to kind of put that info out there. I know that, the taxpayers are going to pay it. The citizens and the taxpayers of Killeen are going to pay it, whether we charge them or you charge the city, and we push it down to the
Pass that
taxpayers.
on.
So I think it's important that they have a voice and
Put that out there.
Yeah, be
Yes,
more
sir.
aware of it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
And can I ask one more? I hate to keep bringing up stuff, Mr. Garrett.
Mrs. Fleming.
Is it possible that I don't know if you've done this or not, have allowed us to know when your meetings are, the time and the place? So some of us, maybe council members, would like to attend and get more
Yes.
information because, I
Yes.
haven't learned enough about this to really know how to speak.
Right. Well, we're a little informal, but typically we're the fourth Wednesday mornings at 9 a.m.
Would it
But
be
we are
possible-
going to start putting that on our
Would you
website,
please
yes.
Maybe send it to Mr. Olson's office so we would know about it.
Sure.
So that if we have the opportunity to go there, we will have that opportunity to attend. Thank you.
Yes, yes, y'all have had a representative last 2 or 3 meetings, but that's good, yes, ma'am, we'll get that out there.
Mr. Okry.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Garrett, just a point of clarification as it pertains to our participation in the construction of Steelhouse. That portion that was, if I'm understanding correct, that portion is our responsibility to the residents of this area.
Yes.
And it is as it pertains to population and the population, and we talk about the Brazos River Authority, under the Brazos River Authority, that regulates both Steelhouse and Belton. So
Yes.
that was our responsibility to citizens so that we have water, or right to water.
Yes, sir.
So
Yes,
that's something, it's a lot to be said about that, but I don't think the overlay of how we fit in, or how our contribution within the plan of the Brazos River Authority, that regulates for the state, that we are required, and that we're not paying the full bill, we're doing that in conjunction with other entities or municipalities
Yes.
who are relying on water delivery from WCID.
Yes, yes. And the Stillhouse project is part of the Region G portion of the statewide water plan. And it does reference that in Colleen's contribution and as well as the others. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you. Good point.
All right, anybody else? And council, as a reminder, just speak into the mic. We got a lot of people in the audience today, so a lot of them can't hear what you're saying, so please speak into the mic. Go ahead, Mr. Harris.
Okay, I was going to wait a little bit, but since Councilman O'Cray brought it up, though, as far as the contributing cities, let's see, because I kind of did a little calculation. It's based on how much water that you said the Stillhouse plant will produce, and with the 10 million gallons that we have rights to, that'll be about 1.25% over a quarter of water that comes to us. Now, Councilman O'Cray, he made the comment that other municipalities are chipping in on this and so forth. So, of course, we're the largest city, so we got the lion's share of the money that was put in. But my question, I guess I have, some concerns, I guess, is. So I think about the future, and I think about the possibilities of droughts and so forth and things like that. But before I get to that portion right there, as far as contributions, I know that. Well, I'm just concerned about, because I know there's water being supplied to other entities, if you will, and I'm concerned about, or I guess I'm just wondering whether or not those entities had to pay into a portion into the plan as well to be accommodated with that water. Like, we talk about, of course, it was a controversy back then, Georgetown.
Yeah.
And so the question is, has Georgetown contributed anything to the plant to get that amount of water out to their lake? Because that's a lake, and, I think it's guaranteed to be kept at a certain level. So my thought on that one is, if a drought occurs of some sort, where are things going to lie? Because, like I said, we only got, like I said, about 1.25% over a quarter. So, but questions on that. If a drought occurs in some kind of crazy way, because I saw their lake back in 2011, I saw it. That thing was messed up. And so I'm wondering how much water will be diverted towards that. Will we be affected by something like that? What's the contingency plan in case something like that happens? Also, I know that water is going to be supplied to the municipal utilities district, and I'm wondering as well, did they contribute anything into the plant in regards to being able to get water? Because we contributed $35 million. Other municipalities contributed millions of dollars. So it seems like anybody who's going to get water from this plant needs to contribute something. Because, for like I said, for 1.25% over a quarter, like I said, 35 is, that's a good little chunk.
Yeah.
But
Could I respond to the first part of your question?
Yes, go ahead.
For just a second before I forget. The drought you mentioned that's a very good question. The water right system is enforced based on age of the water right. So the older rights get the preference on the water. And we do have a couple of rights down on the coastal area that are senior to any of ours. And so in a drought scenario, it's not hard to imagine there could be a situation where our water could be limited so that water could be released from either Belton or Stillhouse. There's a Water Master program in play, which I didn't include in my slides, and I should have, that basically makes that enforcement happen. So if you don't have a water master, the person with the oldest water right makes what's called a call, and they say, we're not getting the water that we have a right to, state, so help us out, state of Texas, then goes upstream and says, you've got to release, and so on and so forth. With the water master, they're the police of the water rights system. So there won't be a call situation, but what I wanted to make is when we do get back to a big drought, which we will, we may be due this summer, I don't know, but when we do, the water master can dictate releases from reservoirs, but they're policing the water rights system. But we haven't gone through that before because we haven't had a severe drought year since the Water Master Program has been in place. But we pay some pretty significant fees that we pass along to you and other entities that funds that Water Master Program. And so far, we haven't had to curtail usage, but that could change. So I wanted to answer that part of your question first.
Okay,
But all entities, the allocation for the funding of the Stillhouse plant was a gallon for gallon. Anyone who wanted to buy in paid the same amount per gallon of capacity. And you mentioned the mud is in Killeen's ETJ. The ETJ, not the mud, the ETJ was considered with Killeen's master planning that said we need a plant closer to where our growth area is going to be. So indirectly, the mud is represented by the city of Killeen in the whatever developer agreements. But as far as capital paid in towards the bonds or anything, that's not part of it.
Okay, because like I said, because my concern was that we were paying in money for other people to, to get water, and we don't get compensated by that or anything like that. Okay, so that 10 million gallons is, so the mud basically is, the municipal utilities district is actually, like you said, a part of Killeen's water plan.
Yes.
Okay, so that 10 million gallons is also towards that particular area, so.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And let's see, what about, I guess I'm still stuck on Georgetown as well. I mean, because I'm, now I kind of.
They're not part of our plant.
Okay.
There was discussions. They ultimately backed out. They still have needs.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure what their plan is. I haven't been in contact with them. But they have rights. They have rights in both Lake Stillhouse and Lake Belton. I don't know the nature of those rights versus ours. I think they're the same. There was lawsuits in the late 80s that led to a reallocation of water rights on Lake Belton.
Yeah.
And there's history there that's not that old. So I think we're all out of the same deck, so to speak, with those rights. But
Okay. Another question, because I know when it comes to repairs of pipes and everything like that, I know in the contract that we're responsible for a lot of repairs and so forth. But is that cost of repair distributed out through the all the entities that utilize the plan as well?
yes, gallon per gallon, yes, sir.
Okay, so everybody pays a little portion for the repairs and everything like that.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Another question I had is about the gray water that we get. The water that's released into Nolan Creek and/or Tremere Creek now, I guess, that water is basically treated, I guess, to a level to where it can be released into the creeks in a safe manner.
Yes, sir.
Is the water that we receive as gray water the same? Is that treated at the same level as that water being released to the creek?
Yes and no. It's what we do if we have to is we add further disinfection to further inactivate. The standards for that water are higher. Generally, our standard treatment process meets those higher standards, but when it doesn't, we add additional chlorine for disinfection, and then we meet all the.
Okay, because I was still thinking, I guess what a lot of people thought back then is, you're getting the water for free, I guess for free technically, and then pumping it back, and we're using it, we're paying for it, but otherwise it would go into the creek for no cost, but yeah, so that's what I was thinking about that one. Let's see here. I'm thinking you got 41 slides, so I had to come up with a lot of questions real quick. Okay, let's see.
And while you're looking at that, I think,
Yeah.
are you finished with your presentation, or
Oh, you
can
can go
you
ahead and finish.
continue?
Yeah, definitely, go ahead.
Yeah, continue
Okay,
on
yes.
with the presentation.
Just real quick recap on the Stillhouse Water Plant. This is the location. In the roadway is, well, okay, it's labeled 2484, just south of Stillhouse Lake. And that the green area is our acreage that is mostly occupied by construction. This is a Google Earth image of our property for the plant And the next slide is going to have a construction layout, and it occupies this full blue area, which is a little over 38 acres. So that it's conventional treatment plant, and we occupy most of the footprint. Now, we were able to leave most of the wooded area buffer on the lower part of the screen there. You can see it's a heavy wooded area. We're trying to be as neighbor-friendly as we can. The project has moved on pretty good. We've not had many weather days to speak of, and we're satisfied with the effort. This picture was taken March 16th, and if you go to the same vantage point and take a picture, it looks much different today. There's been 2 major concrete pours, and this is where the major treatment facility is stationed. There's a lot of ancillary water lines, electric, and so forth, but that's the main plant site. It's one thing I'll point out, just as an engineer, I think it's interesting, but the contractor hasn't had to haul any material in or any material out. And thousands of yards of excavation, and they just found great rock to work with. They rented a crusher. Same thing on the lagoon. They actually found a layer of fatty clay, which is a very impermeable dirt liner. So it's just, you couldn't have made that happen any better. So I just think it's fascinating. But
Mr. Okray.
Just one quick question. I
Yeah.
apologize for interrupting, but if you go back to the slide, well, you don't have to go back, but it was the slide that was titled Location of Proposed Stillhouse Water Treatment Plant.
Uh-huh.
And just from my understanding, because in the green is the Stillhouse Water Treatment Plant, but in the purple you had the Kempner. And at the time that this was being discussed, my question was it feasible to have an agreement to work with Kempner?
To where we,
So I think
Yeah.
of what I've come up to surmise is that Kempner is in another water control district.
they are a water supply corporation,
Okay,
which is a retail. They have retail customers. They have 1 or 2 wholesale customers, but they're primarily retail.
retail. Okay.
There were a lot of discussions. There's a pretty good file on just what you're mentioning, where WCID1 did try to figure out a way to work together on that site, and it just, at the end of the day, it just didn't work.
Didn't work.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
So any rate, back on the capital project, just a couple pictures. This was last Thursday night. They had 4 a.m., they had a pump truck out. And like I said, that site would look a lot different right now. Moving on to the schedule, we expect the plant to be substantially complete in the spring of 2020, meaning we will have the capability of treating and pumping water from the site to through the transmission main. This is a tight schedule, but I think we can make this work. If we have any slippages, in fact, we have a progress meeting in the morning. If schedule slips for whatever reason, I will communicate that to Mr. Olson and keep you guys apprised of the situation. But do know we've got a good contractor, and I feel real good about this project coming together in a positive way. And I think that was all I had.
It was a real good presentation, a lot of good information, and I'm glad that we had a lot of people here in the audience that were able to witness that, because a lot of times we're always talking about water, and I can speak for myself, but a lot of times we really are unsure. You know, we're always talking about shortages, and according to this, I think we're good for like the next 40 years. You know, even when we were in a drought, we never even reached barely half capacity. So, and that's always good to know, so.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Anybody else? Mr. Rivera?
I know probably you heard this so many times. West Bell County District or Corporation. As we go south in Killeen, Have you ever thought yet about going more south to Killeen? Because I know there's a situation right now with Chisholm from Georgetown, where they won't even sell water to us. That's for sure, and I understand that. But as we grow south, everybody said, why we can't use that land in the South Killeen to build businesses and develop yourself going south. One of my reasons is because we got no water. Have you ever thought about WCID going more south in Killeen?
Moving south? Not, I mean, we did talk with Georgetown.
Yeah, but they're definitely not, we
And,
don't,
but-
there's too many lawsuits
Yeah.
going on over there right now.
I can't speak for my board, but I think that we would do whatever was in the best interest of our members and customers.
It's really, that's the only way we could go now, is really south, where we could get more industry. And as we speak about bringing industry to our city, we look for places, and the only thing that my mind goes to is south.
Right.
Ms.
Yes, I just have to
Ms.
say
Fleming,
thank
go
you.
ahead.
I would like to thank you, Mr. Garrett, for coming, sharing this information with us, because it's been a time since we've gotten an update about the water, and the water here is very critical. So I want to thank you very much for bringing all this information to us, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Okry.
Yes, Mr. Garrett, I think it was a year before last, or one of the year before, at the Water Symposium, about 3 years ago, there was a discussion about water rights as they pertain to the watersheds. And it was there ever a resolution of how that was to be determined, being that the water, under the Spanish law, in which we manage our water, was that ever determined? Because everything above ground belongs to the state, and below ground you had, and then it had something to do, and I know that's maybe off task, but it's just a question.
Well, I can say there's efforts underway to try to make groundwater management and surface water management more compatible, because there's a lot of groundwater that's for public use. There's a lot of communities, that's all they have is wells.
Right.
And, but like you said, it's legally, it's treated differently. And I think there's a lot of folks at the state level that are wrestling with trying to get those pegs to fit in a similar.
So it would be safe to say that the fight is not over,
Oh, no.
the over shortage, it's over to say, it's the battles that we're having today, contemporary and into the future, is gonna be over the abundance.
I think you're exactly right.
Thank you.
Yes,
Nash King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sir, you said until 2054, we're good with water. How did you project that? I heard the mayor say, oh, everybody talking about waste. We don't have a problem with waste. But how did you project that we're good until 2054?
The formula, I believe, was used by Scott Osborne and whoever else at that time. He used the growth projections that were recent from the census data, and they paralleled very closely. So you have the population, right, and then each person averages so much usage per day. And if your population projection is close, then your usage projection will be pretty close. And as best as I recall, that was the method he used to estimate the need there.
And the mayor said 2056, correct?
2056, yeah.
Okay, and my
Wrote it down.
concern, to follow up with that projection, we're growing clean in other areas. We will continue to grow, and I'm assuming they played a part into 2056. Okay.
Yes, yes.
Thank
ma'am.
you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Anybody else? Mr. Harris.
Just kind of reconfirming what Councilman Rivera said about going south. So like I said, it's not about water shortage. We do have enough water to go south if, like I said, you get all the legal stuff taken care of and so forth, things like that. Okay, so that's good on business. But now this is just out of curiosity right here. This is my curiosity. In regards to supplying water to the municipal utilities district, Was that just a matter of efficiency coming from the Steelhouse plan, or was that just, I mean, what was the plan behind that as far as the water coming from the Steelhouse plant rather than just coming from our pre-existing plants and just shooting out there? Because that's a lot further, if you will.
From our perspective, it was a matter of gaining the easement we needed for our water line.
Okay.
Yeah, we talked to a lot of property owners in that vicinity, and that just ended up being the path we could make work.
Okay, so the current existing ones would have been a lot more difficult?
Or in some cases, might have involved condemnation or something like that.
Okay, all right, thank you, sir.
All right, Mr. Johnson.
I have a question about the elections. I've had several citizens reach out to me, and they're confused whether they can vote or not.
Yes,
Could
sir.
you explain the boundaries? I assume they're based off of 1984 and how that came about, and if there's anything in the future you think that's going to span those boundaries?
On the first part of your question, I really can't explain the boundary. In our file, there was an effort made, and it was a proposition put before the voters. At that time, it would have been the 1955 district boundary voters who voted to expand to then current 1984 city limit boundary. So that's a little bit about what happened to get where we are now. I don't know why they haven't been expanded since then. There's not much on file or record that I found that would explain that.
Is there something you think that can be done in the future? Because it looks like we have almost half of the citizens have a voice in elections and half don't. So if we're using 1984 boundaries, but the city has expanded down south, I think all the citizens of Killeen should be able to participate in this election, not half of the citizens. And then the second question is are you open in the future of partnering with the city of Killeen and KISD on elections? Because I'm looking at the website, some of the citizens are confused. The times are 8 to 1600, and then one is at the Central Fire location, and others at the community center. I think it would really be good if all three entities could have the same voting dates, the same time, and the same locations to save costs, share costs, but cut down on the confusion.
I agree with that 100%, and we would gladly partner with whoever we can to help us with this process. We are using the same early voting location and the same election day, one of the same election day locations as KISD and the city. But since we are not under contract with Bell County, we do have a separate ballot, and so there will be two lines for the voters. One that will be City of Killeen and KISD, and the other will be Bell County WCID 1. And I guess this would be a good time to thank you guys, the mayor and council, and Mr. Olson for allowing us to share those facilities for voting, because we were kind of under the wire to try to get this thing, and you guys have been very helpful. I appreciate that.
So if the
But
citizens,
to answer your question, we would like to partner
Okay.
in the future.
okay,
We-
perfect, that'll be good. And so I guess they would have to request that ballot at that,
Yes, and we'll have signs.
okay.
We'll have signs.
And on that note, because I was going to say, it's only people that are within that district, the water district, so, because I know a lot of people are going to go up there, and it's
Yes.
like, so they got a verification process and everything that you got to go.
Yes.
Which still, I mean, which just takes me back to the concern. I mean,
Yep.
if we're still working, if they are still working off of 1984 boundaries, you still
I
leaving
think they
half the
agree, I
city.
think we all agree, they need an update, right?
All righty, thank you, sir. Thank you for the
Mayor
presentation.
Harris,
I was just going to ask, what's the process for changing the boundary lines? I mean, what would have to be done to do that? What would be the possible timeline, if you know?
I don't know the timeline. I would assume the process was the same as how it was expanded in 1984, that a proposition would be put before the voters. There was a bill that was filed by Representative Schluter to allow that expansion to occur just through the voters, and then, but I don't know how that, if that would have to go next election cycle, or if that could go in between. Our board members are elected on even-numbered years, and I don't know the timeline involved.
Okay, let's see, gosh, I had a question. Oh, go ahead, I forgot what I was
Mr.
going to say.
Okrie.
Yes, I think, Mr. Garrett, is this the tail wagging the dog? If you're talking about a proper, something that was put together or presented at the state representative level, as far as the boundaries. We're talking about water. I think people are getting confused with the law that's proscribed for water uses in Texas is separate from municipal or geographical boundary lines. I think we're confused on that because I don't see how the city is going to dictate who votes. I'm not a lawyer or an attorney, but I'm just wondering how as a municipality we're doing business for a county and further for the state. I don't think that's our lane. And you yourself, are you not a political subdivision?
We are.
So we can't tell you what to do.
But as a member and a customer, our board would be very receptive to your thoughts and concerns.
Because there's some concerns and thoughts out there, and I think the tail is wagging the dog right now. We start talking about, because you don't even have the authority to go in and say, we're going to have this agreement, because that ain't your lane. Because you have at the legislative level is telling you they're the ones that has authority over the water in the state of Texas. It's bigger than Killeen.
All right, well, great information. I think that
All right,
it was
I
good.
I remember.
Mr. Harris, you got some
Okay,
more?
even as O'Cray speaks, but I said, but we can't tell you what to do, but we sure can ask questions about the process. Okay, and there's no sin in that. Okay, now, the question I was going to ask when it comes down to the, I guess when you said as far as the voting, will the people that live within the boundaries be the only ones allowed to vote, or will it be the entire city of Killeen, customers or so forth? Do you know that?
No, I think it's the voters within the district boundary.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, okay. But that's it.
All right.
All righty.
And great information, and as he said, there's so much to know about this, and he did say that he's available to go down there, and we've taken the tour before, so if you're on the council, you haven't taken the tour, I recommend that, because it's a great tour out there, and they're very receptive to us, so.
Can I just say one other thing?
Ms. Fleming?
I would like to agree with Councilman Johnson, what he asked you, Mr. Garrett, because to me, it's a vital, important question, even though we cannot tell you what to do.
They can't hear you back there, so if you can speak on your phone.
I'm sorry. I would say that I would like to agree with Councilman Johnson. The question that he asked you, sir, thank you so much for trying to answer this. I do believe it's a vital, important question because WCID is having a voting, and they have never voted in so many years, and this is very important. And since they had that revision in 1984, I do think someone, and we're just asking the question, someone needs to look at this, your board, and find out how we can change this, because to me, it's like a voter suppression. Some people won't even be able to vote when it comes down to this. And everybody knows the people on the board, they've been on there for so many years, and so they're trying to change that. So I think it's a vital, important thing, and we need to look at this, sir. And I appreciate it if you could do something to help us out to get get us the answer, please, if you could do that. And I agree with Councilman Johnson on this. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I think we're done. Mr. Okrie, go ahead.
And I agree with the laws in the states of this, laws of this state.
All right.
That's what the state says. And here, we are out of our lane. He can't do anything. He's got to get it from the legislature. We can have a water conversation, but I don't think people are ready for that.
Well, we got it. So there's always issues on it, more education, and I'm sure he knows what he's doing. So if you guys, get with him and make sure that you get out for information. Now, we got some kids out here that have probably been out here for a while, and they're probably anxious to get out of here. So, you know, can we just continue for their sakes, you know?
Yes, sir.
All right. All right. All right, everybody wants a break first? Yes. All right, I'm sorry, kids. I try to get you out of here early, but they don't want to, so 10-minute break. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on to our next item, our third DS item on our agenda there, DS 18-028. Discuss whether there is a public purpose for the city's support of the of Killeen Professional Firefighters Association's Feel the Boot campaign, which is benefiting the Muscular Dystrophy Association. And Mr. Olson?
Mayor and council, on this item, the mayor requested this item come on the agenda, and the background behind that is this. I'll try to summarize it real quickly for you. The Firefighter Association has been doing a Fill the Boot campaign for the benefit of charitable organizations for a lot of years. They approached the city several weeks ago to get an exception to the ordinance. We have an ordinance that governs when people can get in the street right-of-way and do public solicitation. And they wanted to do that at a time and place outside of the provisions of the ordinance. So the ordinance grants me the authority to waive that requirement, which after they made the request, I made it clear to them, and I intend to grant their request so that they get the exception to the ordinance. Now, in the process of going through that, it came to the attention of our city attorney that the solicitation that they have been doing and would plan to do this year would happen with on-duty firefighters using city equipment. That is, they would put a fire truck near the intersection, and the attorney, when she reviewed that, saw a problem with the state constitution. Now, you all have a memo and a staff report in your materials that outlines all of that. In order for that, I can waive the time and place for the activity. I cannot waive whether it's a public purpose or not. And the state constitution requires that the city council find that it is a public purpose in order for it to be able to be done using city resources. And I know this is a little bit strange because this has been going on for years this way. And we have other city activities that have gone on in a similar fashion, like, for example, the United Way campaign. Some level of city resources are used in the United Way campaign as well. And there have been other activities which, when they, in the past couple of years, when they've come to the attention of the law department, they've required that those activities change. So you've got police association activities that have had to be amended. You've got some parks and recreation activities that have had to be amended. We've had golf tournaments for the benefit of the university that have had to be amended. And when this issue came to the attention of our attorney, it became clear that we've got to do business a little differently. These issues are going to have to come in front of the city council for a determination of public benefit and public purpose. Now, in the protocol ordinance that we have pending, we have a number of events listed in that protocol, which if the council approves that protocol as written, those events would become public purpose, because that'll be part of the reason that you would pass that. And depending on what happens here this evening, we are certainly going to have to add the United Way campaign to that list, and depending on what you find well, start the discussion. You don't have to find it tonight necessarily. The official action would take place at a future meeting. But if you find that the firefighter association activity is also a public purpose, we would want to amend that into your protocol as well, so that we have a comprehensive list of the events that we support as a municipality. Now, I will point out one other thing, and then Mr. Clifford wants to talk to the city council. In the memorandum and in the staff report that you've received, the attorney has outlined what you need to find in order to make it an official public purpose. It's not just that you like the event. It's got to be more than that, and there are 3 criteria in there that are kind of threshold criteria, and I can't remember what they are. Maybe Tracy could outline them for us. But there are 3 things you have to find in order for it to be a public purpose.
And that's according to the state law?
Yes.
State law?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And what are the 3 purposes?
The 3 things are, number 1, that there is a legitimate, predominantly public purpose for the expenditure. And expenditure means all city resources, including employee time, not just money. Number 2, the city will receive adequate consideration or return benefit for its donation or the use of its resources. And number 3, the arrangement has sufficient controls to guarantee that city funds are being used for a municipal public purpose. And the benefit needs to be specific to the city rather than just to the public generally. So the city needs to see some reflection of a benefit.
Some of those are tough.
Yes,
Because
sir.
you can go either way on a lot of the things that the city does, because there's so many public benefits, so that's going to be a tough one there. Mrs. Nash King?
I want just to clarify on the 3, it's so broad. So for the city, it benefits free will, advertisement, goodwill. In that perspective, that
I think
united way of working as a community to help others, I mean, is that what you're saying?
it might be easiest just to explain the ones that we've done in the past, the public purpose considerations that have come to the city council in the past. Mr. Olson mentioned the golf tournament. The public purpose finding in that was that the money raised.
They can't hear you in the back.
I'm so sorry. That the money raised would go to the university, and the benefit to the community is an educated community and an educated workforce. Another one was for the police department, Leaf Association, or Leaf. They used, I'm not sure if they still do their 5K, but there was a 5K, and that the funds came into the city, and the donation would go back to Leaf. The benefit there, again, was that they make donations to, or not donations, they have a scholarship fund. And so the public purpose is broad, but there needs to be a benefit to the city of Killeen, not specifically to the governmental entity, but to the community.
Community.
Can I do a follow-up question? So that's not a benefit for Killeen because the city, because why? Those two you named. It does not benefit the city? Yes or no? I guess that's what I'm asking.
The benefit to the city of Killeen, for example, with the golf tournament, was that the finding that the council made was that by benefiting the college and their scholarship fund, that would educate people of the community so we would have a more educated community, which would, I mean, it just kind of ladders from there, but that they would be more educated, get higher paying jobs, pay more taxes, all, you know.
This
kind of off the bat.
concern is not the first time it's been brought to the council.
With this particular fill the boot, yes, it is the first time it's come to council, but this is not the first time that council has been asked to make a public purpose finding.
Yeah. If Mr. Clifford to come up to presentation, because I see a benefit right there, communities and kids and stuff like that. So I don't know what the definition of that, but that's, and Mr. Clifford, if you come out and do your presentation real quick.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council, City Manager. We do have a couple slides that we intend to show, but I'm going to let Brandy talk first. She's the mother of Sawyer here, and she can talk more about what Fill the Boot and MDA does for her family and others like her family here in the area.
Hi, I'm Brandy Clark, and this is my son Sawyer, and he was, He was diagnosed with spinal muscular atrophy, which is a genetic genetic, I'm really sorry.
It's all right.
I know. Degenerative disorder. So basically, the muscles he has are the only muscles that he has. He's missing the SMN1 gene, which creates protein and bulks up muscles and creates muscles. And we were very fortunate to have participated last year with the MDA Fill the Boot campaign. The firefighters go completely above and beyond the line of duty. The funds that they raise through the whole campaign go to help fund clinics, like the MDA clinic in Austin where Sawyer gets seen. And if it wasn't for that clinic, we wouldn't be able to go to Dallas for his treatment, which is another thing that the funds help support, is life-enhancing treatments. We are currently getting Spinraza, which is the first FDA-approved treatment for spinal muscular atrophy. It's a pretty invasive treatment. It is designed to halt the progression of his spinal muscular atrophy, but it's also shown to show life-changing results for children where they're wheelchair-bound, but they can walk. So it's a blessing that the funds that they raise go to help children like my son. Also, once a year, they have a camp, which is Camp for All, and it's a week, that's his favorite. It's a week-long, barrier-free camp where these children can do anything from horseback riding to zip lining to canoeing and to archery, and just really enjoy and experience life, where in our society now they kind of say you can't do these things, but at camp, because of all the great work that the firefighters do and through MDA, he's given that opportunity. So we were very blessed and fortunate to have them so dedicated and going out there and campaigning for us, because it really does change lives.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
And Mark, I think you said something before, because I think I may have asked you, the money that you get, it stays in the community, the citizens here, or?
Actually, Jen is going to go over how some of the money is used for. This is Jen Jessen and Dawn Verheg. They're both with MDA, and they're actually going to go over some of the slides, and then I'll answer some of the questions, or I'll address some of the local issues.
All right.
So,
Hi, everyone. My name is Dawn Verheg with the MDA. What is MDA? A lot of you probably know MDA from Jerry Lewis and Jerry's Kids and the MDA Telethon. For 65 years, we have grown into a movement. I think the best way to define, as you had mentioned, what MDA is it's Sawyer and his family. And there are hundreds of kids and thousands of kids throughout the country who benefit from the movement of 65 years of raising funds to support MDA and its services. 63 of those years, we've had a very grateful opportunity to be supported by firefighters throughout the country and firefighters here locally who raise millions of dollars a year to find treatments for kids and adults who are diagnosed with a muscular dystrophy, with ALS, or similar neuromuscular diseases. And we aren't able to do this without them. It's been a really important past year and a half. We've actually had 5 drugs approved by the FDA, which is the first time ever in MDA history that we are able to have a child diagnosed with a disease and be able to provide even a small solution for that, and a solution that is changing. There are kids who are able to use their hands, and they're able to walk, they're able to hug their parents again, and they hadn't been able to do that a year and a half ago. So MDA has summer camp, which is relatable to almost everyone. We know what summer camp is. It's an opportunity for 3,800 kids throughout the country to go to a camp with kids just like them and be supported, and to build self-confidence and to build a friend network, and to graduate from camp and then be able to graduate from high school and go to college, get married, and live a full life. So many dollars millions of dollars a year go into research. We have our MDA care centers, which there are 150 throughout the country, which are consistent and multidisciplinary, meaning that Sawyer could go on vacation, and if he needed to see a doctor, he would be able to go or attend a care center, and he would get the same care as he would at his local care center. So there, I mean, I could go on and on all day about the services that we're able to provide, but it really is life-changing. The dollars that firefighters raise, being our #1 sponsor, are really vital to the health and life of Sawyer and other kids and adults just like him.
So with that being said about MDA, I'd like to go into our public purpose and talk about specifically how that affects Colleen. So as you can see up here, the firefighters in previous years had raised consistently about $60,000. In the last couple years, it's been up to around the $80,000 range, and that does have huge effects for our local families, like the things that we just mentioned. The Colleen Fire Department has been partnered with us for over 25 years, and through that has raised over $1 million for our families. So Don kind of mentioned the things that we do, but locally, through our MDA summer camp, it costs about $2,000 to send a kid to camp. We have 14 camp-eligible kids here in the area, which would bring you to about $28,000. We also do send counselors to the camp. They're partnered one-on-one with the kids to give them specific support for all of their needs at the camp, and so that costs about $750 to send those people as well, so that would be a little over $10,000. And then we also have our supporters, like when the fire department comes out to spend the day with the kids at the camp as well. So that's about $50 just for a one-day visit cost, which brings you to about $650. So that's about $40,000 just here in the area that we need for MDA summer camp that we're able to do through the Fill the Boot campaign. We also have the care centers, which Don mentioned as well. We have 36 families in the area that attend one of our local care centers. Some of them go once a year, some of them go up to 4 times a year. So it's approximately $2,000 on average to send the families to these clinics. And so that brings you to about a little over $7,000. We also have a medical equipment loan closet. So when people donate equipment to the MDA, we're able to house it through our local medical vendors. We can save that equipment until a family is in need, and then we actually fix it up for them. We'll deliver it to the client. If it's a wheelchair, we can customize it to them. They'll fit it for them and everything like that. So in the local area, we have about a $1,000 annual fee for that. And then Don also mentioned the research and treatments that are being developed. We have 22 families in the area that have the diseases specific to the recent treatments that have been developed. And of course, we're always working to more treatments and cures for the other types of neuromuscular diseases. There are over 40 different types. So we're still working on that day to day through these funds as well. But how you can see that helping in your local community is kids like Sawyer that have been benefiting from these treatments that have been developed from the research that's been involved in that area. So we have 180 projects worldwide, and we're hoping to find more and more treatments and cures every day. So just kind of to close, well, not to close, he's going to talk more about the logistics in the area, but we just want to thank the fire department for all that they do. Like Don said and Brandy, they truly do go above and beyond for our local families, and we can't do it without their support. So we just wanted to send out a special thank you to them for all that they do every year for us.
So I know there were some questions about the on-duty personnel. Whenever we do this, whenever we've done this in the past, every station goes out. They have a specific location they go to. We keep them within their response area or as close as we can, trying to stay within the city ordinance. All those units are still available for calls, and they do run calls all day, every day while we're doing this, so no units are out of service. The department and the city doesn't pay overtime for anybody that's helping. That's like me, I take on the 2 days that I don't work, I come in and I volunteer my time and help them. I don't get, the city doesn't pay any overtime costs or anything for that. As far as collections, our firefighters, they fill the boot. We have people that come out and collect the money. bring it back to Central Station where we have bank people that are donating their time as well, that sort and count the money, band it into like bills, and then seal it into bank bags. And then we take that money to a bank official and a fire association official to the bank and deposit it. And then we present a check to MDA. We always invite the city out. I believe Mayor Segar came last year whenever we did our check presentation. This year, we'd planned on doing it at a city council meeting like the United Way check presentation does, because typically we do it just in the bay there at Central in front of the fire trucks. But like I said, we always invite the city out. We always thank the city for their support in this and our endeavors, because without the support of the city and the fire chief, we wouldn't be able to do this on duty and raise the funds that we do. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
Mr. Rivera.
It's not a question, it's just a comment. I heard of 3 specific areas that we're supposed to meet in order to continue this program. I think this money that we collect, or they collect, in our city is well spent in our community per se, especially when we look around where they go to. I do whatever it takes to help the city council to get that ordinance passed or changed, or whatever it takes, the legal wise, to make sure the youth program continue in place. I don't think I'm the only one who feel that way, but I really take my hat to you. When it comes to the vehicles per se, and I think I explained that to you about a week ago, it doesn't make any difference. They're right there with those people waiting to make that call.
Correct. If they weren't out in the streets collecting money, they would be at the stations waiting for calls, just like they are when they're filling the booth. They're still waiting for a call to come in, still waiting to respond.
When it comes to the MDA and United Way, Mr. City Manager, I've been donated to MDA and United Way since I was a private in the Army. I can't recall last time I used them, which I don't think I ever did, but I know a lot of people benefit, our citizen right here in our city, and I think that money stays right here in our city. Again, to make this short, I just can't say enough to say thank you to you and the firefighter who do this, and specific the benefit that you all get. That's all I got, sir.
Mr. Kilpatrick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to echo, I was going to ask the question, but it's been answered in the response of this community relations involvement has never cost us a minute in response time for any activity that a first responder is required. It has the needs and meets to meet it. So that's number one. There's no distraction from the city. I'm going to the antithesis, the first that said, if I'm looking at these 3 things that says we've got to show, I will also say that there's nothing that you can argue that there's any distractor from doing this. Transparency. If I hear transparency once, I hear it 15 times in every council meeting. And the most transparent we can have is have our community, our city employees every day being somewhere where citizens can see them, talk to them, be aware of what their jobs are doing and how they're doing it. You can't be more transparent than that. Unless you keep them in the fire stations, you keep them in the police stations, you keep them in the solid waste department, and citizens never see them. Citizens never have the opportunity to talk to them. The citizens never have the opportunity to see that they're real, live, honest-to-goodness, down-to-earth people who are professionals doing what they do every day. So any activity that puts a clean employee into contact with citizens, I believe you can say each one of those 3 things are met. Our city benefits from each one of those directly by having that. The number one goal that we talk about here, when we talk about especially first responders and with other departments, is community relations. We want the community to see our employees in action. And I want to expound upon what they have talked about already, about what the not only the monetary but the humanistic benefits this city gains from its citizens. So I am all for adding this activity and any other activities. If you say this, then you tell the schools you can't take we can't take school trips to fire stations or to police stations because they're on their duty, they're on their time. We're using our resources for them to be able to go to fire stations to see it. That's ridiculous. That's asinine. We need to support things that we can get the citizens involved with our people. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mrs. Nash King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As a city council, we are to be advocate for all of our residents and our citizens. And when you talk about providing the resources and the funding for a field trip or a camp in the summer, you're meeting the needs of a special population where they will not be afforded the opportunity to go to the other parks that we have here. So as an advocate for everyone, they're a part of our community. And those resources, as you stated, and not only that, that gives the parents at least time to breathe because their kids are in a secure, professional environment with people that are trained to meet the needs of their child. So we, as a council, we must be advocate for all children, whether they're special needs or a special population. That's a better word I would use for that. And we can meet that need through the fire department by going out and getting the revenue that is needed to send them to camp. So I look at it from that. If we're here for one person, we should be here for everybody, regardless of age and need. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Anybody else? Mr. Johnson.
Just a quick comment. I think it's a great cause. My concern is that as a council member, I would like to look at all organizations that are doing goodwill that city employees are participating in. And I would like to do that all at once to where every organization, every nonprofit, every association that would like to partner with the city versus doing a one-on-one, because I'm looking at the bigger, I'm looking at the picture all at once, not just MDA today. And again, it's a great cause, but I would like to open it up to where we as a council or as a city can look at all of the programs and see which one fits the best. Because if we do this today, which is a great cause, there are other organizations that would like city support as well. And so I think we have to, while this is a great cause, great association, the MDA, I think we have to just make sure that we're being fair across the board and giving every organization a nonprofit an opportunity to ask for city support.
All right. Anybody else? Mrs. Nash
I
King.
just want to make a comment, Mr. Mayor. When it comes to nonprofit organizations, and Mr. Clifford, correct me if I'm wrong, the fire department, police department, I know you cannot speak for them, did you not choose what nonprofit you would do the fund? How did you go about choosing out of all the nonprofits that we have in Killeen?
Well, the Firefighters Association as a whole decided in the 50s or 60s that MDA would be our nonprofit of choice. And since then, they are the biggest supporter, that we are their biggest supporter, and that's who we choose to support through our efforts.
Because I know through the United Way, if you get on that list for nonprofits, the city do give to that, correct, Mr. Olson? United Way is nonprofit, because I don't want to force the employees to have to do all nonprofit. I think individual, this is an association, not the city of Killeen employees. That's totally different, am I correct?
Well, and so when we do it on duty, the people that are on duty, They have to stay with their truck. So the trucks go to the intersection, but if an employee chooses to not participate in MDA, not fill the boot, they have the option to sit in their truck and wait for a call or wait for the day to be over. We don't force anybody to go out and collect. It's on their own accord. And to date, I don't believe we've had any firefighter that's done that. But that is always an option, and it's always spelled out explicitly to them that if they choose not to participate, that is their choice, and they're free to exercise that choice.
Thank you.
Yeah, and it's and like Mr. Johnson, there's so many out there, but it's a organization that they've chosen, just like anybody, just like my company. I can't do it for everything, but you know, I had an organization 25 years, and I've been doing it, so you know, we've chose a certain organization, and that's it. You know, somebody else comes and it's like we've already got ours picked, because that's it, and it's up to that organization to find somebody that's going to sponsor them, not the city to go out there and make, okay, we want to do that. So, and I think they've done that. So, Mr. Kilpatrick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Clarify, restate my quote. Any activity that puts Killeen employees in contact with citizens in a positive manner is community relations, and all should be supported in that nature. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Restated.
I don't know if the mayor. I don't think I'm not an employer. I think, but you know, I'm kind of a representative of the city. That probably wouldn't go anywhere then. Just exaggerating there. Yeah. All right. Who else? That's it? So what do we need to do? Do we need a consensus and give direction, or do we have them, the council's okay, this kind of, you know, the city's trying to do the right thing, and they're trying to make sure that they have council direction, because they've got rules in place, but if it's overridden by the council, then, you know, come back and say, well, you know, even though we kind of told the council this, the council decided to do it that way, so. Mrs. Fleming, go ahead.
I want to. Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Your mic.
Sorry.
I'm
Excuse
sorry.
me, I'm so used to relaxing here. Mr. Olson, evidently, our city manager, our city attorney had questions about this, right? Am I right or wrong?
No, you're right.
So evidently, she wanted everything to be clear, that if we do this, which I'm definitely in favor of this, and I would never try to stop those boots from, you know, from helping out the citizens. They need it. I think it's an outstanding thing that they're doing, and I go 150% for them. But the only thing that I'm just asking a question, and I'm just a little confused that our attorney had some questions on this. Is that because she wants to maybe pull in other organizations that may want to do this? Is that what it's about? Can you explain that again? Because I'm
Yes,
wondering
ma'am.
why the attorney
I
came
can.
in and did her.
We are bound by the state law, which says, we, meaning me.
Okay.
The manager of the city that controls the operations of the city, I am bound by the state law, and I am required to tell the firefighters that they cannot use on-duty personnel to do this activity. I can grant them the waiver that says you can, because I'm authorized in the law, I can say, yeah, you can do it outside of the time limits of the ordinance. You can do it outside of the intersections and roads that are called out in the ordinance. I can say that.
Yes.
But I cannot say you can do it on duty unless the city council has a finding of public purpose. So the council, if you don't have a finding of public purpose, I have to tell them they can't do it on duty.
Okay, so I think each person should see if we have a public purpose. If we do, it looks like we do have a public purpose, you know. And, you know, like I say, I think it's a wonderful thing. But again, I would like to say that if, you know, one other thing, I'd just like to ask one other thing. Is it possible that they could do this when they're off, or do they need to be getting paid to do this? That's just one question.
It's possible, but I think we would all anticipate that they would be collecting less money because they probably have less participation.
I'm just
in the
asking this
process.
because it's, you
Yeah.
know, it might be brought up as, can they do this while they're off and
They
things
can.
of that nature, you know?
Yeah,
And
yes, they can.
Okay.
So Mr. Olson's absolutely right. We can do it on off-duty, but he's also right. We would probably raise substantially less. There's a big difference between, when you see a fire truck and an ambulance and the guys out in uniform, you know what those guys are doing.
Right,
You
okay.
recognize who they are versus me out there in a T-shirt and a pair of shorts
Sure.
with a boot. And it's just a difference of perception.
Oh, I help
don't-
you all, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. I
You
help you
just-
guys out when you're out there with the boots and everything.
I think
Yeah,
you've given me
I
money
definitely
before.
help you out. I was just asking those questions because some of these things have been brought out, do they get paid? Are you all still on salary? And things of that nature. And as I've heard before, where other organizations may want to do this, and can we get paid, while we are soliciting also? So this may be brought up as well, sir. That's why I'm asking this,
it could-
because it may be brought up to you later on.
I am certain it will be.
Yes, sir.
But we'd have to go through the same process with the council, and the council would have to have a finding of public purpose.
Absolutely.
Before we could
Understand.
allow city resources to be expended on that purpose. So, Mr. Mayor, what we need, if the council wishes to have a finding of public purpose, I would need direction from the council to prepare that, and then we'd prepare a resolution to bring back for a formal action of the city council.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Harris?
I was going to ask, you already said you would approve it, but I was going to ask you the question. Even with staff, do y'all have a proof of public, as you said, do y'all have a proof of your own perception of public purpose that you can express as well, or do you just need the council to express it?
I just need the council to express it.
Okay.
The parameters of the law, you have those, they're outlined, we've outlined them verbally, you have them in writing. It's only the council can make that finding.
Okay.
And in the staff report, I'll emphasize again, in the staff report, there's a number of questions in there that you need to be able to answer. And as a city employee, as a manager, as a non-elected official, I can't make that determination. Only the elected body can make it.
Council.
I have,
Call for the finding.
Okay, let's get a consensus so we can move on here. So, everybody, Mr. Herrera, you okay with it? Mr. Harris, you okay with it? Mr. Johnson?
So it's for the, this is for us to agree that this is a public purpose, or this is for you to do findings?
It's to direct me to prepare a resolution finding a public purpose.
Okay.
You're okay?
Yes, if you can also look at if you can also look at how all the city resources are being used in relation to the other.
And I think if it's all right with you and the council, I believe that will happen when we bring our protocol back.
Yes.
Because there's a section in the protocol that deals with that issue.
Perfect.
Which, I mean, again, I just want to be fair across the board. I don't disagree. I think this is a great cause. I just want to look at everyone, just look at everything that's using city resources. And that's all. I think it's,
And it
for
is,
me, I think
it
it's
is
a fair thing.
substantial. When you add it all up, it is substantial.
Mrs. Fleming? Mr. Okry?
Yeah, I'm not going to hold it hostage. Yes.
All right. Mrs. Nash King?
Come on, we don't need that now, you guys.
Ms. Nash King, okay? Mr. Kilpatrick, okay. So we got council consensus that to prepare a resolution. And is this something that comes up before the next meeting, or?
It will be on your next agenda because these folks have to get on with their program,
Okay,
right?
all right.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Mayor, I got a question here.
Mr. Rivera?
It's just a question, it's just for the city manager per se. Is there any way possible when you make this resolution, whatever, that way they don't have to come back every year for the same thing? That we do it permanent in the city? Something permanent?
Yes, and again, we'll deal with that in the protocol.
Protocol?
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
Once we have the protocol, we'll be able to do a comprehensive resolution that you can just pass one time. So we'll be back one more time at least.
Yes, okay.
Okay.
All right, well, thank you very much. We appreciate it, and we're going to go ahead and move on.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next is DS 18-029, receive crime briefing. Chief Kimball, you're back up.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. Item before you today is a briefing on crime. It's one of those issues that affects everyone, and felt that we needed to have a briefing on it. So that being said, I kind of went from my perspective, my personal perspective, being here since September 1st of 2017. I did look at the full 2 years of crime data that we do have in 26 and 2017 and did some comparison on that. The data will compare monthly Part 1 crimes from 2016 and 2018. Again, as a point of reference, the Part 1 crimes are our criminal homicides, our rape, our robbery, our aggravated assaults, auto theft, larceny, and burglary. As a matter of history, the council hired a new police chief on September 1st of 2017. He's very appreciative of that. First 30 days was used to complete an assessment of the department, along with staff. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. We conducted a thorough investigation or thorough examination of crime data, the processes that we use at the police department, and the workforce. We quickly realized that we needed a plan. We needed a guide to kind of help move us forward. After talking with the senior members of the department, guys who've been there a while, we looked at the Department of Justice, OJP, Office of Justice Programs, and we knew that they could provide us a roadmap and in a relatively short amount of time. Our last update, there were some issues going on in DC. They didn't meet. They couldn't meet on some phone meetings we had scheduled, but we think in the next 30 to 45 days we'll have something from them. I think they've met with many stakeholders here in the community, probably many people in this room, and I think they'll have a plan for us soon. Again, looking at the DOJ, and one of the things when I got here in September, we wanted to know what was going on with crime. There was many rumors about where crime was coming from, what was the reasons of crime. There was, people talked about Katrina and the hurricane. There was rumors about and innuendos about where crime was happening and who was committing the crime. So again, we wanted the DOJ to have that unbiased point of view using our own statistics, community statistics, to find out, to answer some of those questions for us. And we look forward to their report soon. The crime data, or the crime rate, now, when you get this comes out by several sources. The FBI does it from year to year. Other magazines do it. And what they do is they commonly use this to compare communities' crime as it relates to their current population with other like cities. So if you take a look back, going back into, I think this starts in about 94, I believe, and you see there is a downward trend when it comes to crime. The formula that you use is our total number of crimes is divided by the population. You multiply that by 100,000 and you get the crime rate for the city. And that's used, the FBI comes out with the crime rate every year. And as you'll see in the next slide, the summary is, crime has pretty much stayed the same, but the population is increasing. So, and this next slide kind of backs that up right there. Looking at that same time period, you see where crime has kind of, a slight upward trend. This is the raw number of crimes that happen here in Killeen, not taking population into concern. So, kind of level. As we looked at full years of crime, at the data that we do have, you see 2017 is there marked in the blue, 2016 marked in the red. You see that in that full year starting around August, crime is starting to take a huge slide, and it continues to take a slide now. Violent crime is that crime that everyone hears about, the one that keeps everybody up at night, the one that makes the newspapers and the social media rounds. Again, we're looking at the full year of 17 this is going to be since October 1st. This is, I'm going to talk about that October date to where we're at now. That October date is when, after I was here for about a month or so, we saw a huge spike in crime. We put together a mini task force along with our federal partners, our state partners, our task force, other police departments, and we really hit crime. I think we saw a really good result where we saw crime going down. And we attest that to going after some repeat offenders. We knew there were people in this community that were wreaking havoc on this community. We used some federal statutes, some creative federal statutes. We talked to our partners in Waco, our ATF, our FBI, U.S. Marshals. They really helped us. We had a commitment from DPS. I'll talk about that later. But once we got that into effect, we saw a pretty good downward slide in crime that continues today. When we started to talk about crime, we weren't talking about crime when I first got here. I really had some issues. There's a lot of things going on. The department was in transition. People were talking about a lot of things, talking about baseball, talking about the budget, talking about pay raise and things like that. But we weren't talking about crime. I said, guys, we're in a crime business. That's what we do. We're police officers. We're in a crime business. So we got together every week, and we did it today. Every Tuesday, we get together, 9 a.m., and we talk about crime. We talk about the crime that happened last week, we talk about the crime that happened last month, and the crime we're talking about that happened last year. And we use that as our guide to develop plans to combat crime. We don't do it in a vacuum. We know that, when you look at CPTED issues, if you're broken window theories, we know if you have areas that are not taken care of aesthetically, those areas can become crime prone. One of our lieutenants got together with our other partners here in the city, and they cleaned up basically a camp behind the Kentucky Fried Chicken. We looked at a picture of that today compared to what was 2 weeks ago. I mean, they're ready to set the thing on fire and clean it out, but it was really a city where people were using to evade the police. People were living back there, and that area is all cleaned up. So we have people like that who have come to our CompStat meetings. The police chief, I've talked to the police chief at KSD. He's ready to come to our crime meeting and see where crime is taking place around the school system. Secondly, we have to deal with operational efficiency. We have to be good stewards of the public funds and the public resources. We know that there are budget issues. We know that we have problems with recruiting. We're not going to hide from that. So we know that giving the number of officers and civilians that we have to make sure that we're doing it right. We challenge each other literally every day. We ask why we're doing the things that we do, and is there a better way to do them? We also know that if we improve our relationship with the community, it provides for a safer community. We increased our social media presence. You see us at more community watch meetings. We have our award-winning Crime Citizens Police Academy going on now. We have a very active Explorers program. Those things we know we have citizens involved with crime, they become better eyes and ears for us in the community because we clearly know that we cannot arrest our way out of crime. There's not enough space in Bell County Jail. There's not enough space in the prison system and the Department of Corrections that we cannot lock up everybody. But we know that we have partners that are helping us. When they see something, they do something. When they see something, they say something. We know that having that relationship with the community will help us with crime. Nonviolent crime in 16 versus 17 has kind of pretty much stayed steady. It has crisscrossed. This is a military town. People have stuff, and people like to take other people's stuff. We're really trying to combat that, but it's very difficult because we need people to practice good crime prevention techniques. If I could tell anybody, if I could stand here at this podium, please lock your cars, because probably 65 to 70% of our property crime is with people leaving their cars unlocked. People leave their cars unlocked with a birth certificate in it, their wallet, their weapon, their kid's birth certificate, their rent money, and every prescription drug. They leave it, and bad guys not even breaking the window. So if I could stand here and listen to me now, please lock your car tonight. Our nonviolent crime, again, that's it's pretty much stayed the same. There is a decrease that is going on now. That's going back since October. Not a huge increase on that, or increase or decrease in that nonviolent crime. So we're trying to gauge if we're doing the right thing. So we took when I made this slide on March 18th. Is it working? This time last year, we were investigating 7 murders here in the city of Killeen, and today we only had 1. We have a few more rapes. Our robberies are down 35%. Our aggravated assaults almost in half. Again, that burglary number is not where we wanted to be, but it is down. And that larceny, that people stealing each other's stuff, is still about the same. And our vehicle thefts are down also about 57%. And I will take the opportunity to say this, is that, you know, when we looked at our processes, the things that we were doing, we did find where we were not reporting auto thefts correctly. We talked to state DPS, we talked to the FBI. They know about that. I think they know about the reporting issue. We're on track now. We're literally doing it by hand so we could talk to our software vendor. But still, that probably accounts for maybe 15, 20% max. But we're still, auto thefts are down because I think people are much more aware than they were before. In summary, the Killeen Police Department is aware of many challenges and issues. We're going to face them head on. We're not going to hide away from the issues. We know that there are many things coming up. We know there's going to be a tight budget. We know there's going to be issues when it comes to recruiting and keeping our most talented employees, sworn and non-sworn. But the good thing about it, we have partners. I've talked to the criminal head division at the U.S. Attorney's Office. They are ready to assist us in any way they can. I think today, as I check my stats, that we have about 33, since October, we have 33 cases that the U.S. Attorney has agreed to assist. Those are people who will be removed long-term from this community once they're convicted. They're not going to Bell County Jail, they're going to federal penitentiary. They have been very creative in their use of the United States Code. One high-profile case that we worked a few months ago, a young lady on social media flaunting weapons on the internet. She is now in federal custody because she'll be charged with as a what's the charge? She's basically, since she's admitted she was addicted to drugs, and she was in possession of weapons. Federal code that I didn't even know existed until this year. So using those creative ways to keep some of our more violent people out of this community, her and her brother also. We have commitment from DPS also. That came as, again, from our relationships, again, with some of my officers in the back. We had a DPS come down here this weekend. They were very interested and very committed to keeping us safe. In just one weekend, last weekend, we had an operation where where over 239 traffic stops, 90 citations, 295 warnings, 82 vehicle searches, 6 felony arrests, and 2 handguns, 9 warrants served. And that's us working with DPS. Something that hasn't traditionally happened here in Killeen, but we're glad that DPS has reached out to us, and we will continue that operation with them. As a police chief, I know that there are responsibilities that I have. One, when it comes to crime, when it comes to fighting crime, when it comes to the fear of crime. There's a lot of talk about the fear of crime, but some of that is not proven when it comes to the statistics. So I have to help promote what's really the truth. Crime is decreasing. This is not an unsafe city. If you are involved in drugs, if you're involved in violent domestic situations, you will have an impact on our crime. But can you go to the mall and go to HEB and not be assaulted? Probably so, but just don't leave your car unlocked. You'll probably be okay. So
Just don't leave your car unlocked.
that's the presentation. I can stand here and talk all day. I love talking about the Killeen Police Department, but that is my presentation, and I will gladly stand for any questions.
Well, Chief, I just want to say, you know, I know it's too early, but as mayor for the last couple of years, around this time frame, I want to say, I'm not sure, exactly sure, but, you know, as mayor, I've had the last couple of years, news reporters, I'd say the TV, and they want to talk to me because of our crime rate. And so I remember 2 years ago, we were like number 7, and then last year when I did it, the reporter says, you know, we're number 9, and I'm saying, well, number 9, that's an improvement from the previous year. And I just want to say, so far this year, nobody has called me on that. So I just want to commend you on the job that you've done. And I know it's, like I say, it's still too early, but you've done a great job in fighting it. And I think the biggest, you know, I know you do your job as a policeman, and you guys do a great job, the whole force. But I think that what I see that you do is that engagement in the community, and I think that that's an important part of it, because as representatives of the community, I think that it's our job too. So you have our support, you know, when it comes to engaging in the community, when the leadership of the city does it, and then you get the staff and all that do that, that's going to make a huge difference in the community, and I think that, you know, you're doing a great job doing that.
Thank you, sir. And I would be remiss if I didn't say that the team is a hardworking team. Chief Baldwin left me a great team of officers, dedicated officers, and they know the dangers that come with this job. Our officers have been assaulted, they've been shot at, they've been threatened literally as of this week. But they're dedicated to keeping this community safe, and I'm really glad to be part of the Killeen Police Department team.
Mr. Okrie.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Chief, I want to say thank you that somebody's finally started to look at crime from another point of view other than the aggregate. You've actually broke down the variables that create crime.
Yes, sir.
Because that can go so far. I mean, I read the paper when I do read it, because I don't read it very much now because it's not much in there.
Yes, sir.
But when I do read it, it's always it's doom and gloom with crime. But nobody's making the and I'm so glad that you stood here tonight and kind of delineated where the crime is happening. And it's happening between people that know each other. That's where it's happening. And these people are not wanting to be reported. So then we get, as a city, as a department, get pulled into that. And it becomes a statistic, but I'm glad somebody has disaggregated and made plain where these top crimes are coming from, and not looking at it on the whole like we're living in a war zone, because we're not living in a war zone.
Thank you, sir. And, you know, one of the things that we in the team, we talk about all the time is that, you know, giving social media, something I didn't experience early in my career, but an incident can happen, but it can be retweeted and reposted by hundreds and thousands of people, even people who don't even live in our community, and it make it seem like things aren't what they really are.
It's almost like somebody saw a garter snake, and by the time you get to 10, 12 person, it's a dragon.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Rivera.
It's just for the city manager. Is the chief going to have an opportunity next week to do this presentation in front of the city council again in the dais, where also not only us could see it, but also could be presented through the cable?
Yes, we can do that.
Thank you, sir.
I think he probably should get with our PR department, Hillary, and help her do one of those, you know, announcements on video that we do all the time for the public to see, that everybody can share.
Already got it planned.
Oh, there you go.
There we go.
All right. Anybody else? Mr. Johnson.
Just a quick few comments. Thank you for your presentation.
Yes, sir.
I do agree with you that crime, grime, and economic upward mobility go hand in hand, and we really can't address one without addressing all of them. And that was the point behind the North Killeen program, was shining the light on grime and cleaning up the areas of North Killeen, which would also weed out a lot of the crime. Of course, you know, I'm a big fan of crime prevention, especially community policing, and so I appreciate what you do, what your officers do. I see them out giving out basketballs and playing with the kiddos. Many citizens have told me that they appreciate seeing you as chief of police out there, whether it's at a Black History program or whatever the case. They appreciate it. I appreciate it. And I also appreciate you letting your officers, especially Lieutenant McDaniel, put a plug in for him. Hope he get promoted one of these days. He'll kill me later. But appreciate you letting them take their time, because he comes with me to the Bob Gilmore Senior Center, and we serve meals. He also will be with me next week at Meadows. Last but not least, I appreciate you hitting it head on, addressing there is an issue with crime, and you are doing something about it. And also not trying to do it yourself. And I think that what we say a lot of times in the community is that we say, as as a city council member, I can solve all the issues by myself, and the city is only as good as the labor that we put into making it a better place. And so I appreciate you engaging the community and getting them involved in solving crime and violence and truly making our city a safer place. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. And I'll pass those accolades on to Tammy Mosley, our crime prevention specialist. She does an outstanding job. She's just about as busy as I am. I think we crisscross each other throughout the city at different places, but she and our three sector lieutenants, what I've done, I've divided the city into three parts. There's three lieutenants commanding those areas: Lieutenant Smith, Lieutenant Reyes, and Lieutenant Smith, Reyes, and Lieutenant Bryant. There are three little mini police chiefs, and they're responsible for everything that happens in those individual areas. That cleanup that happened behind Kentucky Fried Chicken, for example. Lieutenant Bryant was responsible for getting that. They're responsible for everything from jaywalking to murder in those areas. So I'm really glad to have them. I got a really good investigative team. Some of them guys are in here today, but I can't stand here and say it ain't all me. But there's a hard-working police department that, regardless of what go on with budget or money or finance, they're dedicated to keeping the city safe.
Bryant is the one that has a good hair, right? Is that the lieutenant with the good?
I'm not going to talk about his hair on here.
All right, Mr. Rivera.
No, Chief, I was going to say, you're getting praised a lot today, and you just said it. Can you pass also to the men and women that really fighting crime out there, like you said? Because I know you get a lot of things done, but those men and women needs to know that we appreciate what they do every single day, putting their life for us every single day. And that is why, as you may know, the same way we speak today, I hope that's the same way we speak when you come up to us and you tell us what you need in order to keep those men and women safe so they be able to go back home. So let's not forget what we said tonight.
Thank you, sir. I'll pass it on to the men and women. I usually start a speech by talking about how I'm grateful to be the police chief of the best police department in Central Texas. And on behalf of the men and women, sworn and non-sworn, the volunteers and explorers, I'll pass that on to them.
Mr. Okrie?
Yeah, and don't forget your other component that deals with crime. And it was a sweep of that with the code enforcement. That was a thing that we went through all these zones. It was like 5 or 6, went through the whole city. Not just one part, it went through the whole city. So it's that other component that goes along with that. And get off Kentucky Fried Chicken. It's other places around here that
Yes, sir. We have some, and again, I know we're just getting late in the evening, but I mean, we have some before and after pictures of some viaducts in the water areas that we, we know we have to clean up so crime can move on, the Gray Street Bridge and some other places, but we can talk about that.
Crime is everywhere. It's not isolated to one side, and it's usually an element.
Mrs. Fleming.
Chief Kimball, I would just like to make a comment. Thank you for everything you've done. I think you've done an outstanding job since you've been on. And I would like to say kudos to Tammy Mosley. She is an outstanding person. She's on your staff, and she's doing a wonderful job as far as neighborhood watch programs and assisting us in doing our job in the neighborhood. So I would like for you to just give her a raise. Anyway, I think she's doing a terrific job.
I will give her some accolades.
Oh, right, her and Lieutenant Bryant and the other two guys that are working with her, I think they're doing an outstanding job, sir.
All right.
And I
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, thank you, Chief.
Appreciate it. All right, our last item, DS 18-030, receive rough proportionality and traffic impact analysis briefing. Mr. Olson, welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a bit of a dry topic, so I'm going to try to keep it as non-technical as possible. But we're going to start with just a couple of questions. These are rhetorical questions at this point, just something to keep in mind as you go through and you hear this briefing. We're in an information gathering state, but the two key questions to keep in mind is who is ultimately responsible for paying for the infrastructure necessary for growth? And then the second would be, would a traffic impact analysis ordinance be beneficial to the city of Killeen? So we'll talk more about what those things are, but just keep those questions in mind as we go through this briefing. Next slide. Oh, it's not. It's froze up. Okay, so without the slide there, I'm going to keep talking through this. It'll catch up when it catches up.
Do we have it done?
It is in the packet. Okay, we're rolling now. There we go. Okay, rough proportionality. This is a term that's used by our legal counterparts, and it's in state statutes. But the rough proportionality concept just says that when a development occurs, a city can neither require them to install more or less than that development has an impact on the city. And I was challenged to come up with a good common sense comparison for this. And the best I could do was when you look at, say, a potluck dinner that you attend, when you have different sized families that attend that same potluck dinner, a family that has a two-person family is not going to be bringing the same amount of food to that potluck dinner as a family of 6 or 8. The larger family obviously is going to bring a couple of dishes rather than just a single dish. So it's the same concept. When you come to the table, you bring with you what your impact is on, in this case, on our community. So when we talk about rough proportionality, the most common piece that is referred to in rough proportionality is the traffic or transportation-related items. These are right-of-way dedications. They are the size of the street that's necessary to convey traffic. And our City of Killeen code speaks very little to the impact of traffic generated by development. In fact, in most cases, it requires a development that needs a new street to install only a local residential street. Traffic impact analysis for these larger developments would help us to ensure that adequate improvements are installed in these new developments. So what does that look like for a new development? Specifically, you look at early on in the process, just an estimate, rough estimate. This is a ballpark number based on national data that's provided. And you would say, what will that development generate? Greater than 2,000, less than 2,000. 2,000 is a typical mark that may teeter up or down depending on what an ordinance looks like, but most cities use 2,000 as the magic number. If you are less than that threshold, then you have no further action required and you continue on with your development. If you are greater than that threshold, then you go into a traffic study situation. You perform that traffic study, and the study is going to tell you if improvements are necessary as a result of that development. And improvements could be anything from a turn lane to just some additional right-of-way. It could be a traffic signal that's associated with that development. There's any number of things there. If your traffic study shows that there's no additional improvements necessary, this could be a case where if a road was just constructed, a capital improvement project was just done, we had a nice new five-lane roadway, there may not be an improvement necessary to that road for this development. But in the opposite case, where if there was an improvement necessary, then that developer would be then asked to either construct those improvements or escrow funds to contribute to a capital project to construct those improvements on a larger scale. So,
Question. In the slide, you said if it's less than 2,000, what happens when there are several developments that fall under 2,000? Are you able to look at it as a whole and say, hey, you know?
Some of that depends, and this all ties in your ordinance, but it would depend on, do all of those developments that are less than 2,000 have a single source, or is it just, you know, a coincidence that you had multiple, your smaller mom and pop style businesses maybe that come in along a roadway, and ultimately that will generate that greater trip factor. But you would look at it on that case. And we'll get into a couple of case studies here shortly, I think, that will help to answer that question a little bit better.
Perfect, thank you.
To build on that, the traffic impact analysis is not a new topic. This is something that's been around for quite some time, and most cities of our size, I hesitate to say all, but very, very much so, most cities of our size require this same type of study. Waco, Georgetown, Round Rock, Hutto, in our area, TxDOT does require a traffic impact analysis for larger developments. They have a little bit of a different criteria, but that just gives you an idea of who is doing this type of thing out there. One point I wanted to make here as well is that from a staff perspective, we hear a lot of times from the city council when we get a zoning case in front of you that you're concerned about the amount of traffic that may be generated by that land use. What a traffic impact analysis does for you is provide you some reassurance that when it gets to a platting stage, when it gets to a development stage, that development does not occur without the adequate traffic improvements. So we don't have to worry about points of access. We don't have to worry as much about how many cars are going to be added to a road as a result of a zoning case, because that zoning case isn't your critical factor there. Your critical factor becomes your traffic impact analysis. And if the engineering study says that it's required, then there's no way around it. It's required. It also ensures, and this is the ultimate thing that you want here, it ensures that the proper improvements are being constructed at the proper time to prevent any future issues.
Mrs. Fleming.
I'm sorry, on what you just added to that, would that be written within the contract, this traffic impact analysis? Would that be within the contract of any contractor that's going into this development?
The way an ordinance is typically structured is there's a requirement for the study, and then there's also requirements for what's contained within the study. One of the items that's contained within that study is called a mitigation plan, and a mitigation plan spells out what improvements are necessary for that development. So what we're going to do now is look at two case studies. These are randomly selected. There's no rhyme or reason as to why we selected these particular cases other than it was easy to give you somewhat of a magnitude of what a traffic impact analysis may do for you. The White Rock development, this is generally from Stagecoach south to the end of the Rosewood area now, Tremere Creek. White Rock area is 10 phases. 9 of those phases are contained within Killeen and take their primary access from Rosewood Drive onto Stagecoach. There are 1,776 lots associated with that development and 1 elementary school that's contained within that development, all taking their primary point of access through Rosewood Drive. If you look at the Institute for Transportation Engineers, this is a transportation engineer's Bible. It tells you that based on the trip generation report studies, this type of land use, you can expect to see 18,286 trips per day as a result of that development. So what we're talking about is 18,000 vehicles either coming in or going out of that neighborhood within a given day, every day of the year on average. That goes from, that type of improvement would typically require roadways such as Rosewood Drive. It's a minor arterial roadway. The capacity on that type of roadway generally ranges from 20 to 30,000. So this instance, you would see a trip generation that would indicate that a minor arterial roadway is needed for this development. When you look at it from a dollar standpoint, I want you to keep in mind here, these numbers are shown as estimates. This doesn't mean that the developer would have paid that amount of money. It just means that that's the amount of money that has been spent to date. And a portion of that may or may not be recouped. But to date, the city, via oversizing agreements, has paid $1.8 million towards the construction of Rosewood Drive from Stagecoach Road south to its current terminus. And as you're aware, we're about to construct a capital improvement project that will take it from where it ends now down to Chaparral Road. So again, not to indicate that that's 100% the developer's cost, but a traffic study would very likely show that that roadway is necessary, and at least a portion of that cost would be passed to the developer.
Question, Mr. Harris?
Yes, sir. In the case where you would see that the development of a minor arterial road would be necessary based on the traffic impact study, what determines whether or not the developer pays for the whole thing or the city contributes to it? Because if it's, if the developer goes in that direction and they create that, are potentially creating that traffic, then is there a reason that the developer couldn't pay for the whole thing in contrast to the city putting money into it as well?
So the reason that the city currently operates the way it does is because our ordinance currently states that the developer is required to construct a local residential street.
Okay.
So what happens in these oversizing agreements is the developer pays for the cost to construct that local street, and the city pays for the additional asphalt required to widen it to whatever level is indicated on our thoroughfare plan.
Okay, so if this right here passes, then would the developer be responsible for the entire cost, or would the city still try to engage in some type of agreement?
There are situations where the developer would be responsible for the entire cost, but there are also situations where a developer may only be responsible for a portion of that cost as well. It depends on what the results of that traffic study say and what the mitigation plan says they're responsible for.
Okay.
So our second case study, and again, this has the same caveat, these are estimates only. You look at the Tremere Road widening project from Elms Road to Jasper Drive. Now, this is just stripped down the Tremere Road portion of it. It doesn't include the other roadways. But the city recently spent $4.5 million on that construction, which comes out to about $695 per linear foot to construct Tremere Road. And that's to add one additional lane all the way down. When you look at a development such as Ellison High School, assuming you have approximately 2,200 students enrolled, then you would see a trip generation of 3,850 vehicles per day. That's, again, an average daily trip generation. A development such as this would indicate that they would need those center turn lanes, which is what we installed along Tremere Road, and that they would probably need a traffic signal for peak hour trips at Weiss and Tremere, which is what was installed with the Tremere Road widening project. Total cost for those two improvements was $1.4 million. Again, there are situations where maybe the mitigation plan says since they're only on half of the road, perhaps they're responsible only for half of it. It may say that they generate enough to have to pay for all of it, but again, that would be up to an engineering analysis to make that determination.
Kilpatrick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So in the case of Tremere, the example here is the only major increase in traffic was Ellison High School. There are others along there but the major one. So does that then go to KISD as the developer to doing that? Not the contractor, not the developer who's going to develop or build it. So we go to another taxing entity and say, you're now responsible for 1.2 million of that 1.4 million?
And that's where we go back to that question we posed initially. Who is responsible ultimately for paying that? Is it the City of Killeen's responsibility? It's easy to say when it's a private developer, as a private developer, you need to pay for it. But when we get into the more difficult discussion topics like another taxing entity, it becomes a little bit more of a sensitive subject. So it's a philosophical debate that I don't know that there's a 100% correct answer for. But in this case, what we're showing is that school has an impact on our roadway, and that they could be responsible for a portion of that. Now, if you go directly across the street, there are convenience stores that would fall into this same category. We just happen to choose Ellison because it's easier to generate traffic numbers for, honestly. But you look at a corner store there, you look at H-E-B on down the roadway a little ways, you look at many of the larger businesses, and you would see similar results for those same types of businesses.
And that's my follow-on question then. As that major development goes into there, it will create needs for additional commercial, and in the cases of the, very well could be apartments, multifamily, where teachers and other, I go to the university district. The college is going to create the traffic into there, but then there's going to be multifamily living that'll create, and then there'll be commercial that's going to go in there. But that I'll join you in that philosophical debate at a later time of which came first, the chicken or the egg, and does the chicken get a free pass by creating all this traffic to begin with, and the egg has to pay for its development along the way, which then leads me into other philosophical questions of for the traffic impact analysis. Because I'm glad to say this is a pre-briefing in nature. Who and when does this event occur? Who's involved into this, the TIA? Is all parties involved in this study? They sit down at a table and they do it, or is this just a bunch of bureaucrats that are sitting down there using engineering books and saying, this is what we've done, this is what we've done? And oh, by the way, to go with Councilman Harris's, then we've mitigated it, we've decided this, and your share is this by our ordinance. So that's one. And is there citizen involvement into it for public hearings before this is enacted to say we're going to do this? Do we get all the citizens and everybody, the stakeholders, all stakeholders involved to understand what this is going to impact on? And then how are we as councilmen going to budget for these TIAs? We anticipate we're going to get 3 a year, 5 a year, 12 a year. How do we staff them? And then how do we carry them over from one year to the other year? Those are philosophical questions I saw when I raised this. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I think I can address a couple of those questions right off the top of my head, but generally, the way the process works, it's not something that the city staff would do. It would be part of, as a developer, when you get ready to construct a development, you hire an engineer. And part of that engineering contract then would be, do you need a traffic impact analysis? And if you do, then you would also hire a traffic engineer as well. We as a city staff would have some skin in the game, as we would have to review and approve of those TIAs to make sure that they meet the intent of the code. But that does give me a good segue into this slide. We're not looking today to solve a problem. What we're looking for was just to bring an issue to light, start to have a discussion, and start to gather some additional questions that you may have and that you may want answered before this becomes a decision that you would need. We would definitely pursue this with a stakeholder group. It wouldn't be just a council action item. It would involve stakeholder input. It would involve community input as well. From a city staff perspective, we would like to request some direction on how you feel towards this. Is this something you feel that we should explore further, or just stop where we're at now?
Mr. Harris.
I'll just say, I mean, I would definitely like for y'all to explore it further, but I just want to say, one of my concerns is, and I always ask myself this question in some cases, what are the loopholes to it? And Councilman Johnson had a good question about that earlier, and I even had it written down before he, even before he said it. We have to try to figure out what the loopholes are in this, because even as he said, and as I'll say as well, back him up on saying this, if you have a developer that says, well, I'll just build a small development right here, go a little bit down the road, build a small development right here, and then go a little bit down the road, whatever the loopholes could be, we need to make sure that we focus on changing those loopholes because whether you like, whether you, like I said, whatever your thoughts are about developers overall in general and so forth, it isn't the issue. It's just a matter of, they know how to do things to try to get their way. And so with that said, of course, they're going to do things that benefit them the most. So we have to be able to close loopholes, foresee those loopholes and close those loopholes and try to put something in place to minimize the possibility of that happening, because I guarantee you, it's going to be attempted at some point in time to create a loophole or to try to get over in some kind of way.
Mr. Okrie.
Yeah, I think without a lot of fanfare, because some of us need to go work for the IRS and close the loopholes, really. You use them at the IRS to close loopholes. But I think we would benefit from a TIA because we're looking at transfer not only for growth, but also for maintenance. I mean, we're still looking at, $30-40 million in near term. How are we going to fix roads? So you're talking about traffic is more to it than saying, trying to keep people from doing what they want to do with their property. And what we as a municipality and what as a state and as a nation would do for people, there are some things that we are responsible for. So it would benefit to look at that. I think the impact analysis to see not one-sided on growth, but is this going to be something on maintenance? Because we can talk about it. Some parts of the infrastructure in our city is, we got to maintain it. Sometimes it takes more than just patching. You have to go redo streets.
Mr. Rivera.
Not only that, it will give us a work plan and a roadmap where we need to be. That's what I figured that will help us out. And in the long run, really is going to help us save money. So that's how I see it. I think it's a great idea.
I think it's important that we keep track of, like Mr. Kilpatrick was mentioning, Ellison, the high school, and the traffic impact that had, and, who pays for that. But at that time, and in the future, we're going to see, okay, there's going to be a new high school. I don't know if it's zoned yet or not, but they're going to come before the council and request the zoning. And at that time, that's when we go back and say, well, we're putting in a new high school. Before we give you the zoning, this is the traffic analysis that we've done. In the near future, we're going to need this road. And instead of just focusing on just the school, you need to focus on the impact that it's going to have in the surrounding areas all around, just like Tremere. Had we done that in Tremere, now Ellison, I know it's a little bit different because I've seen that Ellison grow. I know that it wasn't originally that size and it's grown, but still yet, having that information there to be able to provide them when they come before this council for their zoning request and say, you know what, we're going to need some kind of shared cost on this. So, Mr. Kilpatrick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just I want to tag on to a comment you made is it is, and I do see where it says we'd be assured it would be handling the planning process, but we needed that traffic when we do the zoning. I think that's a little bit too late because at that point in time, we've approved the zoning. The planning and zoning then approves the platting. We have no say-so. We're assured that it will be addressed, but we're not assured it will take the responsibility of this body that by the states giving us the body to approve plats. Yeah. We've given the responsibility to the P&Z to do it, but the responsibility still stays with this body.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Anybody else? Did you have a question, Mrs. Nash King? Mr. Olson.
I just wanted to kind of summarize, draw us back to the primary question, which is who pays for the infrastructure? Where is the fair share of paying for the infrastructure? Right now, the city pays. I was going to say all of it, maybe not all of it, but pretty close to all of it. If we stay there, then this discussion is not necessary. But if you look at it in terms of what is a fair share, then you really need to move in this direction. So that's the primary question. Do you want to start thinking about it in terms of fair share?
And so what we're needing is probably just an okay for them to continue this, and I think I see mostly everybody
Yes.
saying yes, so I think the direction that the council wants you is just to continue on.
Yeah.
Move forward.
Pursue it.
All right, with that, that was our last item, council, so we just need a motion to adjourn.
Adjourn.
All right, everybody, we are adjourned.